to get here, and then our first order of business will be to go to executive session. So as soon as we get one or two more members here, we'll do executive session first, and then we'll get to the rest of the agenda. Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. I'm here. Vice President Moreno's here, Councilmember Thomas, Councilmember Green. I'll move to approve the Budget Committee meeting minutes for March 5th, seconded by Councilmember Moreno. Seeing no objections, that passes 4-0. Councilmember Moreno moves to go into executive session on the item identified, seconded by Councilmember Green. No objections. We'll go into executive session on Wisdom. Thank you. Councilmember Green's in the back, but he'll be out here in a second. Oh, he's here. I'll move to come out of executive session, seconded by Councilmember Moreno. 5 yeas, no nays. I'll also note that Councilmember Harris has joined this meeting. All right, we'll go to Sewage and Water Board as item number 4 and go in the order that's on the agenda. We'll start with additional substation funding. I'm just going to ask for the dais, to the extent possible, please hit your button. I know we're all excited about the topics today, but it would help me. It would help me if we could all just go in order. Thank you. Yeah, but you're not on. Oh, yeah, just nudge. All right. Good morning. I see Sewage and Water Board at the table. Is there somebody from the administration here? All right. Brandy, will you please ask somebody with some authority to come here, because my primary concern is that this project stays on task and on time, and the only way for that to happen is to have the available funding. And we've written from the mayor and said that that information would be forthcoming, and as I sit here today, I don't know exactly where that is. So the second piece to all this obviously is we want to know, A, how we got here, and B, how we avoid any additional surprises in the future. Speaking for myself, at least before letting Sewage and Water Board start, assuming the explanation makes sense, I would favor the approach advocated by the IAB, which is the city funds this necessary improvement, and then we take the $10 million that the IAB has, hold that in abeyance so there are no more oopsies, and we have it available and we don't have to have another meeting like this. But I think before all that, we need to know how we got to this point and what we're going to do to avoid it happening in the future. So, Mr. Corbin, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about this very critical issue and project. As you stated, everybody wants to make sure that this project continues to be on track and to be completed as slated by mid of 2025. It does help to just make a slight but relevant correction that the funding is for the power station rather than the substation itself, because substation is fully completed, as you know, and had been fully funded, and so that's behind us, and that piece is ready to be utilized for the benefit of the entire power complex. And it also obviously helps to talk about in the context of this is a large, about $275 million project that started, as you know, with the groundbreaking back in May of 22 and had been tracking very well. We have been executing that project very successfully. It involved several contracts since the beginning, with some fluctuation between the estimates and the actual bids, running around maybe 10% variance. So we believe that where we are today is somewhat of an anomaly or a one-off, and it's very, very significant situation that we obviously, hopefully collectively trying to solve. So just for the benefit of the committee and the audience, this is a critical piece of the project, and it was estimated to be about $32 million. And part of the preparation for the planning and seeking bids, we've reached out to 15 bidders throughout, not just locally, but beyond the state, with the help of our consultant, Jacobs. We had 6 bidders who attended the actual pre-bid meeting, which is typically an indication. It's a mandatory meeting, so it's indication of what the interest level looks like. So 6 bidders seemed to be an acceptable number and was not a cause of alarm by any means. And ultimately, we ended up with 2 of the bidders who attended joining efforts under a official joint venture and submitted 1 bid. And I would have to say that the bidding community knows what everybody else is doing, so it to them was a very known fact that there were going to be one bid submitted for that project. In corresponding with many of these bidders prior to the actual bid opening, we've made a lot of changes in response to their input. We've actually extended the bid period, or the advertisement period rather, from 49 days to 95 days to allow more thoughtful and complete bid preparation. And we knew that this project was very complex. There's a lot of risky processes in it involving a lot of expertise. And again, the bidding community was fully aware of how important this contract is in terms of finishing. We've discussed it very, very publicly at numerous occasions. Just wasn't lost on them relative to how important and critical this project. So obviously they assume some of that risk and exposure, because reputable contractors don't want to be involved with a project that would fail or would be subject to public criticism. So I'm sure that weighed in as part of who bid and why, and the costs associated with the bid. And with that, I'm going to pass the next slide to Steve Knudsen, talk about the actual bid opening and the part of why the discrepancy existed.
Thank you all very much. Steve Nelson, General Superintendent for the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans. I'd like to open by thanking the council, the administration, and IAB for considering support of this project. As I think everyone understands, it is critical for the city of New Orleans. It is going to be a sea change for our organization and therefore for our community. I wanted to start by looking at that first question that Councilmember Giarrusso asked about how did we get here. We've had an analysis. Our partners with Jacobs Engineering, Mr. Roy Snover, sitting here to my right, they've completed a written analysis of the bids for us, and we do believe that this is a good contracting team with a good bid that can deliver on this project. So I wanted to start with that. But the question as to why we had a bid of $53 million with a $32 million estimate, there are three key reasons that Jacobs has been able to help us isolate. First being there were some line items within the cost estimate that we had going into the bid that were not included in the bid. This amounts to between $4 and $5 million worth of that $20 million overage. We are working going forward to ensure that doesn't happen. We have regularly scheduled estimate reviews at this point, as well as we have started discussions with the contractor, and we'll be having regular workshops to see how we can cut that overage back going forward as much as humanly possible. The second issue that Ghassan mentioned is a limited bidder pool. The city of New Orleans is one of, if not the only location, certainly in North America, probably on planet Earth, that uses 25 hertz power. That's the certain type of power that we use to power drainage pumps. The only other use of 25 hertz power that I am aware of is for trains in the Northeast and transportation. So it's a very limited contractor pool. We have a contractor pool here regionally that understands it. But it is a complicated project. It also has a high degree of visibility. And that team that was put together, as Ghassan alluded to, we did get one bid, and while we believe that is a responsive, responsible, quality bid, that does create an escalation of about 15% by the analysis that Jacobs has put together. That, coupled with the exposure, the level of complexity, and the need for the project, as well as the timeline. We have to have this online by June of 2025. The contractor is, I'm sure, including some risk in that, and we are sitting down to talk about ways that we can mitigate those risks, ensure that we address that, and ensure that the project is delivered to our customers, the city of New Orleans, in a timely fashion with a quality product that will address the issues like we've seen with T4, with feeders, and some of these other things.
All right. I appreciate the explanation, but I guess can we keep it maybe a little simple here? And the bid went up by $21 million. Can you break into categories how everything falls? So in terms of risk, that equates to $3 million. This accounts for this. Let's start there, because I think we're going to want to kind of dive into how these things were unaccounted for and where they came from.
So from a high level, first and foremost, that first set of items, there's about $5 million in cost that was associated with line items that were in the estimate, or excuse me, were in the bid, but were not in the estimate. So there's about 5 of the 20 there. There's a 15%.
Steve, can I just stop you?
Yep.
What does that mean? Costs that are in the bid, but not in estimate. I'm sorry, but keep it simple for everybody.
Correct. There were specific line items that the contractor bid on that were not included in the cost estimate up front.
Right.
So
and is that the consultant didn't anticipate this? Sewage and Water Board didn't anticipate this? I mean, how do we get a $5 million delta?
It's a collective mistake on the team's part. That the scope changed, we added items, and we didn't adjust the estimate. So flat out an oversight by the team.
All right. Okay. So that's $5 million. Got 16 more to go.
All right, so then there's also a 15% contingency, or not contingency, but an escalation because of having one bidder. So you've got somewhere between $5 and $7 million there with having that one bidding team, which again, that's related to the complexity and the nature of the project. We saw the bulk of the bidders that showed up to the pre-bid are also involved in this team and have decided to work together on that.
Okay.
The remaining amount is related to items, and this is where, with the contract, we are working already with the contractor to sit down and figure out with individual line items where there is additional risk. So part of that being the added complexity of the timeline. That figures into part of the project, and I do not have a specific percentage related to timeline, but it is a fairly short and aggressive timeline, as it has to be. Also, the exposure of the project, it's a very visible project. So there's probably between 30 and 50% of that number that is related to additional risk. We do see in the contractor's bid an opportunity for some potential cost savings with soft costs. And Jacobs is here. They've already had one meeting with the contractor. So answering some of your second question about how do we avoid this in the future and how do we reduce the issue that we have currently, we've already started looking at some of those issues where we know individual line items are vastly divergent, and we're trying to understand some of those specifics.
And sir, I assume you're with Jacobs?
Yes, that's correct.
What's your name?
Roy Snover.
Roy Silver. And for those other costs that may be able to be mitigated, are we going to know that before the bid, a week after the bid? Because I just don't want to give false hope to people. I mean, if it's going to be, we think we're going to be able to get some money, maybe, great. If it's not, then we need to know that with eyes wide open. I just kind of want to have an idea of timing and certainty.
It is by bid law, according to state bid law, that we are not allowed to have any negotiation with the bidder before we actually award the bid.
Right.
But there's an opportunity to have those discussions and do some value engineering and some corrections or reducing scope, reducing risk. You know, contractors put a price to a risk, and if we open up the discussion and we take some risks away, that will hopefully lead to some reduction in the cost.
If the city awards the money, will those conversations delay progress?
No.
Because, I mean, that's I think what we're all betting on here is this being done by June 1st, 2025. And that's what I just do not want to lose sight of here is the big picture, although this is another piece. From Jacob's perspective, are there going to be any change orders that are coming? I think we want to make sure that is mitigated, if not eliminated.
Yeah, it's that's a difficult question. No, there's no change orders that we would know of or identify today.
Right, but I think what I'm let me just be really blunt with my question. We have a $20 million, we didn't account for this. It's not accounting for risk, it's not accounting for additional costs, it's not accounting for soft costs. What we all collectively need to avoid is in 3 months another $30 million. We didn't realize this was part of the estimate, and that because everybody knows how important this is, that Sewage and Water Board and the city's not over a barrel.
No, I completely understand that. No, we believe the scope is fully identified. It is fully defined within the package. There is nothing today that we would add as a change order or know that's upcoming or foresee coming down the road.
What is Jacobs doing to mitigate change orders in the future?
So we've set up the risk review workshops with the contractor to make sure we understand the areas that they see a risk in. And we're beginning that process to work through it and make sure we're working ahead of any potential problems they may encounter.
Have any areas been identified?
Not in any detail yet. We've had one very short meeting with the contractor. We have very limited information. In essence, we have nothing but the bid form to work from.
I'm just going to say that meeting needs to happen yesterday, because the whole thing here is, again, the council has taken on a lot of risk in getting money for the substation.
Right.
And I feel like there's been a lot of revisionist history about where the sources of money came from and what happened, and that the council is being asked, again, to find $20 million along with the mayor to make this happen. So now that we know that there's another $20 million here, we also have to have much more predictability about the fact that there is no gray area, there's no uncertainty, and if there is something, that it's identified as early as possible in what's being done to mitigate it. So I'm going to ask, I want an answer next week from Jacobs about a meeting with the contractors, what's being done, any chance for overages, what those overages look like, what categories they fall into, because this is unfair to all of us to have to keep on guessing.
We agree.
Understood.
Councilmember Morrell?
Yeah, actually, I want to start with the revisionist history because you guys have signed the sheet saying you're going to be under oath, correct? If you haven't, I would encourage you to do so right now. I want to start with from the beginning on the substation. When this council came in 2022, one of the first things we were saddled with was the need for this substation. And this council has been consistent in that this is absolutely a priority for the city of New Orleans, but Councilman Giarrusso is much more polite than I am at times, and I think this is a time to be impolite. In February of 2022, a standoff began between the mayor of the city of New Orleans and Entergy New Orleans on who would pay for the substation. Is that correct? And I already know the answer. The Times-Picayune covered it. There was a standoff where we knew the substation had to happen. It had to happen as quickly as possible. The Sewage and Water Board was notified by you, Mr. Gasson, we need the substation yesterday. And the chair of the board of the Sewage and Water Board said, Energy has to pay for it.
There was a question about who pays for this.
Correct.
Substation, yes.
And then Energy said, I'm not going to pay for it. Is that correct?
There were conversations back and forth between the two.
So, Sewage and Water Board management tells Sewage and Water Board, we need a substation. Chair of the Sewage and Water Board, Mayor of City New Orleans says, Energy should pay for it. We wait a few months, Energy says, we're not paying for it. City does not change its position that we aren't paying for it, Energy has to pay for it. It's like will Mexico build the wall? At which point, Councilman Giarrusso was reached out to by the Sewage and Water Board and its supporters saying the council needs to step in to get this money secured. Mr. Gasson, you were in those meetings. Did Mr. Giarrusso step up with his colleagues to set aside that money to force the issue?
Absolutely. I've given
I don't think
Councilman Giarrusso many.
I appreciate you might have done that privately, but I will tell you that's the problem why Mr. Giarrusso says things like revisionist history. And I say that because there's been this question put out repeatedly, does the council help the Sewage and Water Board or does it hurt it? And when we need this money, and you and I talk all the time about this, for those of you who don't know, had we met the initial timeline set by management, the substation would be up this year and not next year. And Entergy, in the course of that debate, warned us, the longer we delayed getting that funding, the longer it would put it off. So we should have had that substation for the end of this season. Hopefully we'll have it by the end of next season, correct?
By mid of next year.
All right, so at the end of the day, when communication broke down, our budget chairman with his colleagues secured the money. Now, mind you, I want to add this just because it's important to note. Even after we secured the money, we had to deal with members of the administration, Ramsey Green in particular, who still fought us getting the money to you. It's fact. So we're here today. The mayor sent us a nice letter on her letterhead as chair of the Sewage and Water Board saying, you guys need $21 more million, and our budget chairman has to go find it. And I say it that way because I think the point that was kind of buried here, and I think he said it in a polite but sometimes obtuse way, is we haven't gotten any information from the administration where this $20 million is coming from. And from the way I read the letter, the assumption was, Mr. Chairman, you were tasked with finding out where the money was coming from, right? More or less.
I want to hear from the administration. I mean,
they'll come up in a second, but you weren't, the way the letter was read, we were not told as a council where this money's coming from. We got to go find it. I appreciate this project is probably the most important project for the city of New Orleans going forward to make sure we have secure power generation so that we can drain our streets when it floods. But the frustration we have as a council is we are repeatedly called upon when you need help to drop what we're doing to give you that help. I appreciate this was an oopsie, a $21 million oopsie, but we have to go find out. We're making assumptions. I've heard from people who have said, well, you've got federal money you can use for this. You've got this pot of money. You've got that pot of money. If it were that simple, the letter from the mayor would have said, and here's where the money's coming from. It's not that simple. In all likelihood, this council may have to defund projects to fund this project. So I appreciate that the Sewage and Water Board and Jacobs is willing to acknowledge mistakes were made. But it's frustrating that when mistakes are made, the assumption is other parts of city government have to suffer to make up for that mistake. Now, I know we're going to talk about this in the next section, but it would be remiss not to mention it. The help this council needs is us taking the Sewage and Water Board more seriously. And I say that, I'm not even going to get into the pay raise thing and the timing of that because it's completely obscene in the middle of a debate on the state, local, and every other level that we have funding deficits and revenue problems that we're talking about pay raises. What offends me is this damn advertorial that went in the TP on Sunday. The fact that the Sewage and Water Board felt it necessary to spend ratepayer dollars on a paid-for editorial in the midst of all this is offensive as hell. It is offensive as hell. As a utility regulator, when Operation Gridiron occurred, we took very seriously ferreting out that ratepayer dollars were not spent by a utility to promote itself. Entergy New Orleans has responded. No ratepayer dollars were spent. The difference between Entergy New Orleans as a subsidiary of Entergy US is that they have money other than ratepayer dollars. The Sewage and Water Board has no revenue streams that are not public dollars. Who paid for the advertorial?
I would happy to explain how we funded that project, and it's equally offensive to hear misinformation given about us that we feel compelled to correct. And this money came from a court case where we asked for restitution from an employee who wronged us and defrauded us and went to jail because of his action, and was for the first time that the utility went after restitution from this person, this former employee, and we received a settlement of $100,000. And we couldn't think of a better place to spend that money than correct all the bad reputation that we received from an FBI raid for one person, one employee, that tarnished the entire utility. And the stories were FBI raids Sewage and Water Board, when in fact they were raiding one person and they were going after him, and he was nabbed and he was in fact found guilty. So we're taking that money to bring facts to the community about all the progress that we're making that many people refuse to acknowledge, and to correct some of the facts, the misinformation that many, unfortunately, in this room share relative to this bid, for example, that we didn't have bidders because we're not paying our bills. That is flat out wrong. We don't have that issue in the Sewage and Water Board. We pay our bidders. Since 2018, when we had a huge deficit and we made the correction, and ever since, you don't hear from a systematic issue relative to contractors not getting paid. That was a flat out wrong statement that tarnishes us and makes it even harder to gain a better, more favorable bid.
I appreciate that. Two things. One, how large is the Sewage and Water Board's judgment list?
About $20 million.
$20 million.
Yes.
And in that $20 million judgment list, are there vendors?
I'm sure there were.
Okay, so the Sewage and Water Board doesn't pay its bills.
That is so misguided, Mr.
Okay, okay. We can disagree as to timing of when vendors weren't paid,
right,
but the Sewage and Water Board has an historic problem of not paying its bills, which is why vendors are on a judgment list.
So does the city of
It does. You're 100% correct. The city of New Orleans is just as bad, if not worse, at not paying its bills. So they're both. Honestly, for those of you who don't know, the city of New Orleans and Sewage and Water Board are the only two entities in the entire state of Louisiana that carry more than $2 million in unpaid vendors and judgments. So you're right. Both of us are, say collectively, yes, yeah, Council bears some responsibility. We haven't paid our bills.
But
on the advertorial, if you spent, first off, any money that's collected from the Sewage and Water Board as a judgment is ratepayer dollars. It is not your money, it's ratepayer money.
Yep.
And $100,000, I could argue that $100,000 spent towards solving things like, I don't know, billing systems would be money better spent. And if you were going to pay for an advertorial addressing that instance with that person, we must have read a very different advertorial, because it wasn't addressing that person doing that thing and defending the Sewage and Water Board. The advertorial was about you. The advertorial was about you, not about this employee who did this wrong thing and what the Sewage and Water Board's done to fight corruption and to work with things like, for example, if you look at the Inspector General's report regarding the billing issues, he actually gave the Sewage and Water Board kudos for the things you've done internally to solve that problem. A better advertorial would have said, these are the things we've done to correct these systems. That's not what the advertorial was about.
Many more stories are coming.
Well, that's not a good thing.
It is a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing, because I called around, Mr. Gasson. There is, simply put, there is no other utility, public utility, or department in the state of Louisiana that spends $1.3 million on PR, external PR contracts. That is a fact. And I'll tell you, if you want me to take you seriously, I'm happy to get you $21 million when you stop spending money on external PR contract. Grace does a great job. She's right there. She's on staff. She's on staff. And if you need PR people, put them on staff. Hiring external PR departments for public utilities or departments in government, we don't have an external PR contract that's $1.3 million in the city of New Orleans. I mean, unless the mayor snuck one past us. But the reality is that if you want us to take you seriously, if you need money, I'm happy to give it to you, but you and your board need to show that you're not going to waste money on silly stuff. You want $21 million? Cancel your PR contract and put that in the till. And I'm happy to find you $21 million to rescue this project.
Our communications office is one person.
Then hire more.
Because civil service is not allowing us to hire more.
Mr. Gasson, to be honest, and I'll tell you this because I've sat at that table fighting civil service over issues. This is a comment really for all of city government, all departments. If you fight civil service and fail, I give you credit. If you don't bother to fight for the things you need and just say, can't do it, civil service won't let me, I'm done with that. If you fought civil service and asked for additional employees, if you fought civil service to do things, I would sit at that table with you to do it, because it's the right thing to do. To not try, you don't get credit for that.
We have tried.
Well, then next time you want to fight civil service, I will tell you, as a legislator, I worked with the previous Sewage and Water Board to address the issues with civil service and address the issues with retirement. I had the hard fights, the unpopular fights, dealing with the issues like the fact that you are trapped in instances on how you could bring in people with civil service, but you have to go have the fight even if you lose.
We would rather have an in-house communications team.
Then have the fight, and I'll sit with you to do it. But $1.3 million to an external agency?
That's over 5 years, I do want to say that.
I don't care if it's over 10 years.
That's staffing that we don't have in-house. Look at what...
If you have the fight and you lose, then we can talk about it.
We could be paying the same amount of money for in-house staffing, and we'll be having that argument, but...
You think that you would spend $1.3 million
for 5 people?
internally?
Yes, absolutely. We can do the math. I'd like to make a correction.
The fact that you have Grace in itself makes you the only utility, public utility, or department in the state of Louisiana I've found that even has a PR person at all. Jefferson Parish Waterworks, they don't have a PR person. The government has a PR person.
They have a communications person somewhere. Can I make a correction about the judgment? Because we are the first administration that introduced in the budget in 2022 $300,000, in 23 $900,000, and this year almost $1 million to start paying judgments. We're the first administration who've started that. We are paying, and we're up to about year 2000. We've paid, I don't know the exact number, but we've paid people that haven't been paid for years. So we are paying our folks who are on a judgment list, including vendors. But to confuse that list with our current vendors who are getting paid or not getting paid is just misleading. We are paying our bidders, our contractors today. There's no systematic issue. And the only reason they go on the judgment list is because it is a dispute and we went to court and we lost. That's the only reason. But if there's a routine, regular process, they are getting paid.
But if a person has a dispute and you lost and you pay them, they don't go on the judgment list. They go on the judgment list because there's a dispute and the city or Sewage and Water Board lose, and then we say, we're not going to pay you, which is how you end up on the judgment list.
We don't create the process. The process exists. Once you go to court and you lose, that goes on the judgment list, and we cannot pay people out of line. We have to put you on the list and start paying from the
But do you understand when I talk to contractors, city and, to be clear, you're right, city and the city and Sewage and Water Board, that's the challenge. The challenge is that if you do work for governmental entities in Orleans Parish, and you know that if you are owed an amount of money and you sue them and you lose, you go in line on a judgment list. Do you see how that might discourage people to bid on contracts because they believe if I'm owed a certain amount of money, if I win my lawsuit, I get in a line behind people who weren't paid in 1996 to someday receive payment? I will tell you, the judgmentless issue is something the city and Sewage and Water Board need to work together on to have a reckoning, because it hurts both of us. But that being said, you can't deny the fact that judgment lists are looming over both. That is why, and we'll get to the second part of this meeting later, Mr. Giarrusso, but that's part of the reason why I support the recommendation of working your groups like the Department of Transportation to do contracting, because they pay their bills, which means you'll get more people that'll do bids.
And I would trust they have a judgment list as well. So does
They
every
don't
single
have a
public
judgment
utility
list.
and every
No one has a
business
judgment
in the
list
United States.
in excess of $2 million, but the Sewage and Water Board and the City of New Orleans.
Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. Let me just, I'm going to start with the 32.25 million. When we had that estimate, from what I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was around, maybe December of 22. When did we get the bid for $32 million? Was it December 21? Sorry, January 22?
No, that estimate would have been in.
That estimate?
2023.
It was in 2023 when we thought it was going to be roughly $30 million for the substation. And so to me, just like it's
I'm sorry, I was talking about 1420. My mistake.
what was it?
I was talking about 1420. My mistake.
Yeah, so we're referring to the same thing with a different name. The substation is Entergy's, or 1420 is the piece that.
I got it.
So you're correct. Yeah.
So it was just, you all tell me, when was it that we received the initial roughly $30 million estimate for the substation?
Q4 2023, I believe, was our last
Okay.
update. Yes.
So once again, so not that long ago, right? Not that long ago. And who did this estimate for us, or for Sewage and Water Board?
That was completed by our engineer of record.
Okay,
James,
so it was you all. And so I think kind of the issue is for, myself and others looking at this, that wasn't that long ago, and now it's ballooned to where we are now. And almost pretty much doubling in cost, which is what's really shocking everyone, and it's certainly astonishing. But I want to say this. I mean, I think this speaks on a much larger level about what we're seeing in the city of New Orleans when it comes to contracting and bids that come in. And not just for the Sewage and Water Board, but for the city of New Orleans itself as well. Whether it's a reality of people not getting paid or contractors not getting paid from the city and Sewage and Water Board, or whether it is just perception, that certainly being out there has been impacting bids within the city of New Orleans, where we've seen only single bidders come in, and therefore, bids significantly higher than they should be. Obviously, we're seeing this now with the Sewage and Water Board. We saw it with Councilmember Druso, the construction of the potential next phase of the jail. And so this speaks to the much bigger issue that we are seeing within our city that's significantly impacting the people of New Orleans. Because if we have businesses that don't want to do business with public entities in New Orleans, for whatever reason that may be, because they believe that they're not operationally sound or whatever it could be, that ultimately is impacting our bottom line, but more importantly, it's impacting people's tax dollars. And we are spending way over the amount that we should be on a variety of different projects within the city, now within Sewage and Water Board, and other entities, public entities within New Orleans. So my question to you, and I've worked on a way to try to fix that on the city level. One is the city council, through a resolution I had, voted unanimously to bring in the legislative auditor to figure out exactly, for us, it's not being able to pay contractors on time, and trying to figure out like why is that happening and find us solutions to speed that up. For you all, what do you believe could be a way that the Sewage and Water Board would be able to show to the public and demonstrate that you are an operationally sound organization, and ultimately start to rebuild trust within the city of New Orleans and the people you serve?
Well, I mean, the answer is action speaks louder than words. I mean, you just have to execute and execute professionally and well. And I think we have improved our procurement process last couple of years tremendously. We have not had issues. I mean, just look at the scale of the project that we have done the last couple of years. Not just the power complex. The power complex is $275 million within 3-year period. That is a very impressive track. We're getting bidders to bid, sometimes successfully, sometimes, you know, it's a market. But then you also have to compare us to the rest of the world. I mean, this nation is struggling with bids being high. And if you talk to counterparts elsewhere, other utilities and municipalities, that is a thing now where bids are bids are coming higher than the estimates, and we are constantly adjusting to the market, but then the market keeps changing or responding to.
And I agree with you. You know, certainly bids are higher, but to have single respondents or no respondents, and you know, having to put bids out over and over again and taking longer to do projects, that's a little bit of the different piece. I want to agree with you on something, that certainly action does speak louder than words, no doubt about that. And I think that there are two action pieces that if you did right now would go a long way toward beginning to regain public trust in the Sewage and Water Board. One is the consolidation of drainage. You and I have talked about this many, many times. We had a whole working group, a whole task force within the city where we thought we had all willing parties willing to come together and consolidate drainage. At the end of the day, that didn't work out. It, you know, appeared the Sewage and Water Board wanted significant additional dollars to get that consolidation done, and it was not moved forward with. But I'll say this, I have a list that I was able to generate that has roughly, 8 or 9 different locations where, for example, it could have created efficiencies if we had drainage just consolidated, of 9 different locations, 8 or 9 different locations where the city was sending out folks to try to begin work for specific leaks that were happening. And it turns out it's like, wait, this is a Sewage and Water Board situation. So if we had consolidation, as we all know, with just drainage, you would have just one team. And this one team could be directed to go and fix a variety of different projects. And there wouldn't be this back and forth of, you know, somebody starts a project, then let's stop it while Sewage and Water Board comes in, or somebody goes out to check out a project and it turns out to be a Sewage and Water Board a drainage issue, but but DPW went out first. Joe Geruso and I have, I don't even know how many emails now from a back and forth from the big pipe burst that happened on Cone Street about a year ago, April of 2023, where it's back and forth with this homeowner between DPW and Sewage and Water Board, back and forth. I mean, just like, just one email after the next, this individual really begging for help from each entity, and one entity going, it's like, well, we just finished our work, and now we need the sewage and water board guys to come back. And then this neighbor, this particular person's emailing, this at DPW, and then only to be sent back to sewage and water board. And this has been a year of back and forth. And so just the consolidation of drainage, just if we moved our current city resources, our employees, our equipment over to sewage and water board, and drainage could just be all in one, the efficiencies that would be created without a dollar more, just the efficiencies alone, I think would go a long way. The other piece too is, of course, the billing issues. The billing issues, certainly agree with bringing in a team of experts to come in and fix the billing issues. I think if you fix the billing issues, you immediately consolidate drainage. That's low-hanging fruit. That's been low-hanging fruit for way too long. And I think you get those two things done, you start to regain trust in your organization. And then from that point, we rebuild, ultimately getting us to a point where it's an agency that hopefully can be one that is looked at with a good operational organization and management structure, where you have more interest from different groups wanting to do work within the sewage and water board. Just my opinion on it.
And we'll get to the billing more when we get to the next section. I'd like the CAO to come forward, please, so we can talk about the funding source, how we're going to get there. I guess also from Sewage and Water Board, I didn't ask, what is the timeline issue now? The bid is in. You all have to respond to the bid within 30 days. So what clock are the collective we on to button this up?
We need to make the award at our April board meeting.
And when is that, Mr. Nelson?
April 17th, I believe.
So the council would need to vote this council meeting to award the money so you all could enter into the bid?
We do need to have the money in hand in order to legally award the bid, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Montano, is the plan then, we have the capital budgets ordinance, which I deferred from the last meeting. Is the plan to amend that to add money for Sewage and Water Board?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. So, as you know, just in a brief history, a couple weeks ago, of course, you and Ghassan approached in my office so that we could figure out and solve this pressing issue to keep the project on task and ensure that the funding was viable and address the questions you all are having currently right now. We evaluated the best pots it could come from, understanding the importance and the priority of the project. I pushed very stringently and hard against using our operating budget, as I know the council would as well. So understanding that we have a bifurcated system right now with our capital budget, yes. What the administration does propose, and in discussion with Ghassan, is amending the capital budget to carve off approximately $8 million. The $8 million is key because we did not want to delay existing projects within that capital budget. So where there would be a project that was not ready for construction, we left the design dollars in there, pulled out the $8 million. That would be through an amendment of the existing capital budget. Now, in conversation with Ghassan, so that they had their cash flow ability moving forward, what I recommend is that we are on task to issue our next issuance of bonds, probably late July, August, and utilizing that remaining delta through our next issuance of bonds, which we hope to have through the Board of Liquidation and all the other entities thereafter. My understanding is that won't affect the project timeline or the cash flow for that project. So just to recap, amending $8 million for projects that we feel like we can pull out without having significant delay or effect, and then fast forwarding to the next issuance of our bond sale coming probably late summer. The reason I recommend not using our fund balance or anything of the sort is that as we are going into our bond sale, we'll be in great discussions with our credit rating agencies and ensuring to those credit rating agencies that we have a fluid cash flow and a significantly stable financial picture is tantamount for the city to continue to have both the premiums and the overall effect of good ratings for the credit rating agency. So the timing's precarious, and that's why I recommend we utilize the formula just described of the capital budget.
All right, can you hang on 1 second? So then As a practical matter, that leaves a $13 million difference. How is Sewage and Water Board going to figure that out between April 4th and when the bonds are sold in September, or, I'm sorry, in July or August?
So in collaboration with the IAB, we've decided to move two projects that had already been identified to be funded by the IMF to the right, basically to avail the necessary funding to close the gap, to enable us to have the entire amount of money in hand before we can encumber those funds and then award the contract on time. So we will have the $13 million available temporarily to allow us to do that.
Will those two projects have anything at all to do with any power at Sewage and Water Board?
No.
They're completely unrelated. Because what I don't want to do is be too cute by half and starve Sewage and Water Board unnecessarily for this thing. As Councilmember Morrell said, I think we all agree this is the most important infrastructure project in the city. We have to get it completed. And so I just want to make sure that this formula of $8 million to be voted on at this next council meeting, plus Sewage and Water Board getting $13 million, I guess, from the IMF over a period of time, and then the city essentially coming back in September or October with the $13 million difference, will not unduly delay either this project or the other two projects that you're talking about right now.
That is correct. And for the record, just to be clear, the two projects are one has to do with the purification, water purification. It's a bulk chemical storage facility, and the other one is to repair the fenders that protects the raw water intake at the river. Two critical projects, but we can afford moving them to the right to keep this project.
I want to ask because we've seen turbines blow up and other things happen, and I'm not trying to be Mr. Dread, but water purification, groundwater is extraordinarily important issues too, and I just want to make sure that if we're pushing these projects off, that we're not going to come back in June and hear there's some groundwater issue now that is emergent and exigent. We have to solve it at this moment because we've pushed these funds into different buckets.
We hear you. The raw water intake, the protection, we currently use a rented barge to basically serve as that purpose to protect the raw water intake. So we're 100% secure in that regard. And the other project is an additional improvement to take us away from needing to have continuous delivery of bulk chemicals. So it's an improvement in the process, but what we have now works. It's just a much needed improvement in the future. So.
All right. I'm just going to be blunt. I'm still not completely convinced. So we all have to think about this, and now we have 2 days to kind of get it all done. What I don't want to do is, because this project is so important and there's an established timeline, mess up groundwater issues otherwise. So we have a capital budget ordinance that's in place. Well, we can talk a little bit more, but I feel like I need some more certainty on this groundwater issue.
Yeah, there's no ground. I misspoke. It's
right.
Raw water intake.
Okay, and water purification.
And yes,
Well,
in terms of the chemicals. So the chemicals that we use are not the question. It's
All right.
just the process, how we deliver the chemicals to the site, and the reliance on transportation. So the bulk chemical facility would allow us to store chemicals for in case of a disaster where transportation is an issue.
Okay.
It's more resiliency question, but we've been relying on this process of the system for many, many years. So while I appreciate you being concerned, so are we, but in terms of making an educated decision, I think those two can afford being moved to the right, again, in the interest of getting this project.
But to make sure, let me just say this, Ghassan. If the city's commitment is to get Sewage and Water Board this money by July, August, September, then I want to make sure this is being parallel tracked so that by September, these other two projects can hit and start running.
Absolutely. The process, the design, the permitting required to do the work in the river is processing, so we can hit the ground running the minute we have the money.
All right, and then from Jacobs, we're going to have the things that we asked about by the 9th. Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Montano. I have some comment cards, but some of them are for the next item. I know that I have two for this items from Bezer's, Hammock and Gallo. I saw Mr. Sloss and Ms. Howard. Did you all want to speak on this item or on the task force? I can't hear. Why don't we get Mr. Gallo and Mr. Hammock up here and y'all can decide how you all want to do. So, Bill and David, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Good to see all of you. I'm here as a citizen. I'm not here representing the Infrastructure Advisory Board, but I do want you to know that I am on the Infrastructure Advisory Board, and we've had to wrestle with this issue of the additional $21 million during our meeting last week. In order to be able to come up with funding that would assure that this project gets done on time, the IAB did move to facilitate $10 million toward the gap that we're talking about. And I'm glad to hear that, generally speaking, you folks seem to be favoring making sure that the additional funding is available. Our proposal, and it's sent to you guys in a letter, was that the IAB funding serve as a backup, that the city allocate the $21 million shortfall, and that the $10 million of the IAB stay in place in case there's any other overruns that come into play. You guys have that letter. Hopefully it's informative and it will help you make what decisions you need to make today. I also appreciate your diligence, the work that you're doing, the questions that you're asking, totally appropriate under these circumstances. But it is critical that this project get done, and it get done prior to the hurricane season of 2025. I agree with the reality. Councilman Morrell points out that it should have been done before the hurricane season that we're about to enter. It's been a difficult, challenging process. All of us have worked together to try and get from point A to point B. We're so close now. I don't want to see this delayed, and I'm here to ask you to give a favorable vote on this additional funding.
Thank you, Mr. Hammock. Mr. Gallo?
Good morning, everyone. Appreciate y'all time being here and appreciate all the due diligence. I'm here on behalf of myself, 19 Swallow Street, and I'm also representing the Business Council of New Orleans as their Water Management Task Force leader, and also speaking for Paul Flower, who's our Business Council chairman, who couldn't be here today. We have, and additionally, with all the other members of the Sewage and Water Board and their engineering firm, have reviewed the circumstances that got us to this situation. We wholeheartedly would ask you guys to support the request for the $21 million. I think even though Councilmember Moreno brought up a lot of questions about city bids, both city and Sewage and Water Board, this one is a little bit different in that the fact that there's a specialty, the fact that two companies that have joined forces to have the right labor force. I happen to have been worked side by side with those companies in the past, being a member of the construction community in the city, and both companies have a tremendous and very, very good workforce. And I think it would be very, very wise to award this bid at this time to an only bidder. So that being said, thank you for your time, and I appreciate all y'all's efforts.
Thank you. And we'll just look forward to getting the amendment. Ms. Howard?
Janet Howard. I am a resident of New Orleans. I'm a member of the Sewage and Water Board, and I am here not talking for the Sewage and Water Board per se, but just talking for myself. There are a couple things I think that are interesting. First of all, thank you, Councilmember Giarrusso, for considering this proposal, and the rest of the council members. It is a big overrun on a specific part of a project, But when you look at the project as a whole, I think it's worth noting that the overrun on the $275 million project is 11%. That is different from 50%, and I wouldn't want that repeated to, going out to the general public that way. The other thing is consolidation of drainage is something that Sewage and Water Board has heard recommended by council members and has heard recommended by the task force. And it is something that Sewage and Water Board has been very open to, provided the funding comes with it. Right now, it's underfunded by the city. Sending it back to the Sewage and Water Board is setting them up for another, it's setting them up for failure on the thing because it won't be properly funded. It has to be funded. The funding sources we have do not allow us to use them for that purpose. Send over $2 million, you're just sending a disaster without the resources. It's just from my point of view as a board member, I can't agree to something like that. That's just an unacceptable proposal. And I know that there are savings to be had from doing it, but it has to be funded somehow. Finally, there is a big difference between the processes for paying judgments and the processes for paying vendors. Vendors were a big problem till about 2018. A lot has changed at the Sewage and Water Board since then. We've been fortunate, and I can't say this enough, to have Ghassan Corbin with us. He has been strategic. He has taken on issues that have never been addressed. We take these things for granted now in our conversations. The power complex. This organization went for decades with the most outdated power complex you could possibly have, and everybody was just happy saying, we'll just patch it up. We'll put a little gum here, we'll put a little Scotch tape here. It doesn't work. This man came in and has had the vision to change it, and he's found at least 10 sources of funding that he's had to put together for it. I think he deserves a pat on the back instead of the kick in the pants every once in a while around here. I'm sorry, it makes me angry as someone who actually watches what's going on.
You agree the council deserves credit as well for finding the $52 million?
Yes, I do.
Okay, just
yes,
making
I
sure.
do. You're part of the sources, but this
significant-
constant bashing.
Wait. A significant part, though.
It's a significant part of the sources. The state has provided a significant part. It's coming from many sources. But one person has had the vision, the foresight, and put in the energy to make this happen. It would not be happening otherwise. And I think it is time to give credit where credit is due.
That's not, I'm sorry, but that's just not true. I mean, I give Ghassan credit for being at the helm of that happening. Hang on, let me finish, please. I give Ghassan credit for being at Sewage and Water Board as that happened. But the bottom line is energy and the city backed away from this, and the city and the council stepped into the fray to fund it. And hang on, and I'm just trying to tell you that we get frustrated. I'm telling you, we get frustrated because we took the licks internally and externally about having to lead on this, and then it becomes we're a forgotten memory of what happened.
Joe, I'll give you full credit, but I'm saying there is credit due to Ghassan Corbin, and I think it's time this community started giving to him. There are problems at the Sewage and Water Board. There are billing problems. I will be the first to acknowledge it. He will be the first to acknowledge it. But the concept of AMI, which is the ultimate solution to the billing problems, is also another thing from Ghassan Corbin. And I just think we should be supporting the Sewage and Water Board. We should be supporting this man. We should all be working together. Thank you for working together on this.
Ms. Howard, before you leave.
Yes.
Okay. We've been talking about AMI since 2018. I appreciate, let me be very clear. No one here is discounting the fact that the Sewage and Water Board has historically been a dysfunctional agency and that it is in better shape than it was previously. But that is like saying you had a car that had no engine and no tires and couldn't move forward, and now it's got new tires. I take great umbrage, particularly on the footnote that is, billing's a problem. We'll deal with this during the next section, but billing's not only a problem, this council, with Mr. Corbin and Mr. Gonzalez at this dais, created a process to solve the problem. And we have the receipts that the Sewage and Water Board has repeatedly, continually underplayed to the public the fact that billing is a problem. We, the council, have acknowledged billing's a problem, but the fact the Sewage and Water Board continually underplays it directly undermines public confidence in it. You know what would be great? When we did that bill in 2022, the bill you all fought, what I told you all at that time was, work with us to acknowledge billing's a problem, here's the solution. And what I got back from all of you was, we got, Renee, we're solving it. We don't need this bill, we're gonna solve it. To date, we're in 2024, billing is not solved. I am tired of people saying billing is a problem as if it's not a problem that can be solved. The tools, and we'll talk about this shortly, that are in the report from the governor's task force are tools we already gave the Sewage and Water Board in law and in ordinance. And at some point, somebody, whether it's Mr. Corbin or Mr. Gonzalez, has to accept responsibility that fixing billing has not been a priority.
Oh, that's wrong.
I don't think that is correct. I think there's
Well,
a
it's
problem.
fine. And shortly, we do the task force. Mr. Gonzalez will come out and we'll talk about what has been done and not done with billing. We have emails where we are literally telling them how to use the current law. Like, I'm not trying to go on the next subject, Mr. Chairman, but the task force said, well, the Sewage and Water Board should just take uncontested actual reads, generate a fixed bill from an average, and make that the bill till billing is solved.
That is not what the task force says, by the way. It's a different methodology, and it's...
Oh, their methodology is actually less positive to y'all than the one we already have. But the point being that, and we have the email from Mr. Gonzalez, he complains that Cogsdale doesn't allow it. You know what? It's called math. You take a person's bills, the history of bills, you find 3 uncontested bills, you take out your cell phone, you type in the 3 and you divide it by 3, and that gives you an average. And you know what? We know Sewage and Water Board can fix bills because you have employees that did it for themselves and their families.
All right, Councilmember Morell. Using your methodology of the 3 averages, because of the way the Sewage and Water Board does billing, creates a certain problem. The billings have been a problem. Everybody knows it. We can't get enough meter readers. They're estimated bills. You get 3 estimated bills in a row, then you get an actual, an uncontested actual, which is a makeup for the 3 estimates because estimates tend to be low. You take that, which might be for 40 days instead of 20 days, and then you will find that someone has a bill that's being used for the average that was a makeup bill, not a monthly bill.
You're talking about the true-up bill?
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's the issue. If that is a problem, then what should happen is that the Sewage and Water Board should communicate with the council that true-up is an issue and we can amend the ordinance to address it. We passed and completed that ordinance, Ms. Howard, in the fall of, what was that, 2022, Mr. Druso? Yes. The fall of 2022. So we're in 2024. Our frustration is, rather than tell us, this is a problem, help us fix it, the management sticks their head in the sand and does nothing. When we had those billing meetings in 2022, we were told, and the Sewage and Water Board told the public repeatedly, we are estimating every other bill. That is false. You are not estimating every other bill. The reason why we had the door hanger language put in was because we were trying to rebuild trust in the public that the Sewage and Water Board, as they publicly stated, was estimating every other bill. You would see a door hanger on your house every other month, and the public would have the assurance, okay, every other month is an estimate because we don't have the personnel to do it, but at least every other month's an estimate. Over 2023, rather than the Sewage and Water Board come back to us and say, we cannot estimate every other month, it's a challenge, we need changes, they just didn't tell us anything. They just didn't do it. And at some point, if the public has to pay their bill because the law requires it, and the law does require it or you lose access to water, the same respect needs to be given by the Sewage and Water Board that it has to follow the law. And if it can't follow the law, rather than ignoring the council exists, other than our role to give them money, they could come back to us, Ms. Howard, and say, we need changes. That is something that's always on the table. You can't say we can't solve the problem and not have a suggestion on how to do so when we are always the ones trying to figure out a way to solve the problem.
Okay, Councilmember Morel, I'm not privy to the conversations that management, the Sewage and Water Board had with you, and I'm going to look into that and find out more about that. But in the meanwhile,
Everything that I mentioned, Ms. Howard, was on the record in these meetings. These are not, to be clear, these were not private meetings. Everything I'm telling you was doing the Sewage and Water Board Task Force meetings and the council meetings. These are not private conversations. Every other month being read was repeatedly said during the task force meetings. All of the conversation regarding bill hangers, task force meetings, and I said repeatedly, both at the task force meetings and privately, if there are problems, and Mr. Druso said it as well, come back to us and we'll solve them. You don't get to not follow the law and not suggest how you can solve it.
Councilmember Morel, I couldn't agree with you more. Would you please? What I'm trying to say is there are a lot of good things that have been going on, and I am, as a board member, as a resident of this city, as someone who wants things to work, I think it's time to acknowledge a little bit the things that are going on, the initiatives to replace the power complex, AMI, to develop a properly functioning human resources system, and the planning that's been going on.
And I think I don't disagree with you. What I would say is it would be easier for the public to see the work you do if you had public meetings.
We do have public.
Are your meetings recorded and publicized on the internet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
100%. Then let's work together to have more transparency and more accountability to make sure the public has access to them. Because I will tell you, when I talk to the public, they don't feel like in your tiny boardroom it's a public meeting, and they don't feel like they have access. So let's figure out, as I've said since 2022, we as a council, though this relationship seems very antagonistic at times, we are trying to help you figure out ways to build credibility, because I do not want the 2026 millage to fail, because you need money to run drainage in the city of New Orleans. The reality is that unless we collectively work together to rebuild public confidence, and when I say that, some of the things that y'all do and the timing of the things that y'all do is so frustrating to us, because we see public confidence going down the toilet. And it's going to get to such a dire place, we can't climb out of it. If we could, I would say the good work you're doing, whatever that is, and I don't doubt it's happening, is eclipsed by billing. It is absolutely eclipsed, because the only interaction people have with Sewage and Water Board is the drainage in their streets and the bill they get each month. And when those bills are wrong, especially wrong on multiple occasions, that voter, their only experience with you is my bill was wrong, and I have to go through hell and high water to correct a bill that is wrong. What has been frustrating for us, and I'm going to stop because our next measure is, if you gave as much effort to billing as every other part of the system, and we collectively solve that issue, that would do so much to rebuild public confidence. I will tell you, to be candid, I'm Eugene Greening myself, he's saying last comment, but the fact that Jeff Landry is offered as a special master is not a gift, it's a slap in the face. Because the way it's interpreted by the rest of the state and the Louisiana legislature is that we are so bad at billing, the state's gonna have to give us money to do it for us.
Councilmember Thomas?
No, just a question, historical moment. In 1990, there was a drainage renewal that came before the public. That drainage renewal was very important in terms of draining the city of water. Right now, I'm not going to say who raised the money to defeat the drainage renewal. There's enough documents available for that. But it's estimated that that renewal to date, had it passed, would have yielded somewhere near $241 million. That renewal, which wasn't a new tax, but was something that people had already been used to paying, or certain parts of the community had been already used to paying. What were those $241 million? What could they have been used for, since we're talking about budgeting and drainage?
I can only stipulate that that drainage or that specific millage was meant to support the catch basin and the smaller drainage system. And that's when we lost that millage, we lost that system as well, and the city by default inherited the responsibility. So there has been no money, in any significant way supporting that very critical piece of the drainage system, cleaning catch basins, cleaning laterals, and maintaining the pipes that convey water to our canals. That had been neglected since 1990 because the money was lost.
And since we're talking about reform and task force, have you guys read the 1980-81 reform effort that was authored by Dutch Moriel on reform of the Sewage and Water Board?
I have not.
Okay, you guys may want to read it. That was the first African-American mayor who thought back then it was important to reform the Sewage and Water Board, who served, who had access to it, who did business, the disparity in terms of what happened in access. And he actually got pushback from the majority of a very prominent community when he set out to try to reform the Sewage and Water Board. That white paper, I think, still exists. It's 1981. I think UNO, they have it in their library.
All right, thank you. I think we've exhausted this topic before we get to the task force. Mr. Corbin, do you need to change out the table for anybody for the next one? I'm sure Mr. Silver would appreciate the
Yes, we
reprieve.
do.
And this has been foreshadowed, but I'm certainly going to take up the billing as the first thing because that's in the report. And I think many of my colleagues do not agree with what's going on in Baton Rouge right now. But one thing I think many of us feel, though, is it says in the task force report on page 4, lack of public confidence in billing is the cornerstone of Sewage and Water Board's problems. Nothing can be remedied until billing is corrected. And I will just start with my frustration, which is I look at the law, which was initially changed in the summer of 2022. Conversations began that fall. Councilmember Morrell introduced the ordinance in October of 2022. We passed it as a council in December of 2022. And we are now over a year, and it's not being followed. And it says very clearly, 159-3, subpart B, beginning on May 1st, 2023. So we built in extra time to give Sewage and Water Board time to toggle back and forth between estimating 1 month and actual reads other. If Sewage and Water Board elects to send an estimated bill instead of an actual bill, and by the way, actual bill is a defined term, the billed amount shall equal the average of the last 3 uncontested actual billed amounts. If the customer receives an estimated bill calculated in any other manner, the customer shall only owe Sewage and Water Board the average of the last 3 uncontested actual bill amounts, and Sewage and Water Board shall recalculate the bill to reflect the correct amount owed. Actual bill is defined as a Sewage and Water Board bill on which the billed amount for water usage is a result of physical reading, customer's meter by meter reading for the billing period, which to me means it shouldn't be a true up. And if that was a concern, then we should have addressed this a long time ago. But I'm just putting all my cards on the table. My frustration is we passed the law, people may not like it, and what I got back yesterday from Sewage and Water Board is our system does not allow implementation of the law, so we're not doing it. And that needs to be remedied yesterday.
We couldn't agree more. We could not agree more. And if I may, maybe just kind of a couple larger points specific to one comment about the task force and the recommendations. We had zero control of the creation of the task force, much less what's in it, and we have not weighed in on what's in it and whether we're favor or opposed. Just
well, we're going to talk about that. I mean, I think just so you know, I think we are being asked to weigh in, and I think at some point Sewage and Water Board is going to have to say, we endorse this. This is something we're ambivalent about, and this is a thumbs down. and we're going to have to, I think collectively we need to be on the same
Right,
page.
right. Amongst all the points and recommendations that were made, we just drafted and ready to send specific asks that we want, obviously, the state, the city council, everybody to be aware of, net relative to our priorities and what we need help with. And what happens outside our control, we can, I mean.
I get that, but I guess what I'm saying, Mr. Corbin, is the state wants to impose something that's even more onerous, potentially. The task force has represented something that's even more onerous than what the council has imposed. It'd be 12 actual reads. We have 3, so literally a quarter. And I felt like this wasn't happening, but yesterday was sort of the confirmation that it was not happening, and we need to solve that.
Right.
I mean,
right. So I guess to look at the formation of these rules that we want to obey. Okay, there's no intentional or systematic defiance to any of the ordinances that were established. We did, for the record, oppose or showed some reservations about some of the rules.
Agreed.
As they were formulated, and you went through with them regardless, and we felt like you were setting us up to perform something that we knew we were going to have a hard time logistically, not because we don't want to, but we'll get there.
I know, but I guess where I'm getting frustrated is I just don't understand. I'm not a computer person, but all we're asking literally is to take 3 reads. Your actual read is $100, your actual read is $100, your actual read is $100, and therefore your estimate is $100.
But let me just, if I may, focus on, there were a couple very useful recommendations or ordinances to encourage us to send bills so we don't have bills sitting, not being sent. And we understood the intent, and we took 10,000 basically bills on hold, and they're down to about 15. So that you've succeeded in encouraging us and pushing us to do the right thing. So I mean, that should be acknowledged, that in terms of what we could do and fully control, we are doing. To say that we're not doing anything about billing, that we've never acknowledged that billing is number one issue, is not correct. Well, I've acknowledged it every single public opportunity I had.
But Mr. Corbin, like I'm gonna do something you may not like, which is use your own words, which is actions speak louder than words.
Okay.
And I'm saying my volume of emails related to billing has not decreased. And let me just say this. I don't agree with all the laws Congress passes. I certainly don't agree with all the laws the legislature has ever done. And I know that people may not like the laws the council passes.
Right.
But they're the law. And what I have seen is that we instituted a law that said take 3 uncontested averages. This means you paid your bill willingly.
Right.
You didn't contest it, you didn't dispute it, and for a year that hasn't happened.
So on that, I mean, we're happy to dive into this and share our challenges with that. We are trying to move into automation rather than manual, okay? That request specifically, that direction would require us to physically and manually look at every bill, and we have 140,000 of them. And then, as you know, every other month we are estimating 70,000, and we're reading the other 70. So you're asking us to manually have our staff manually look for a uncontested bill, which no software will detect on its own. That has to be a human involvement. And we know that our manual processes have failed us miserably, whether reading a meter to processing, anytime that involves humans have resulted in tremendous failures. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but it is a fact. So what we've tried to do is find an actual automated process to achieve just that, to smooth out the past consumptions using 10 to 12 month worth of bills with 3 actual bills to come up with an estimate. There's no perfect way to do estimates. It's a given. So to use your method versus our method, it's one and the same in terms of, at the end of the day,
it's not because let me
bill is difficult to do automation.
But then we needed after 3 months of saying we're trying to implement the law, this isn't working, and what are we going to do to try and resolve that? Because what's happening is Sewage and Water Board has a bad estimate that gets into the system and then becomes one of the 12, and then your bill at the next estimate is raised as a result of the algorithm misreading the estimates. So that's what we're trying to eliminate, and I'm not saying Sewage and Water Board doesn't want to eliminate it. What I am saying is it's frustrating to pass something and to be told there's no way for us really to fix it whatsoever because...
We're not saying that, though. We're saying we're using a different method that could get us to an estimate. We're not confident that we can accomplish what you're asking us unless we go through a manual process that is bound to fail. And then we're back to square one. We believe that using our software and its limited capacity the best we can temporarily to come up with an estimate, knowing darn well that we are going to replace 5,000 meters every month moving on, starting in April, and those will require nothing, no estimates whatsoever moving on. So we're going into that phase that everybody's been waiting and hopefully celebrate, that issue will become moot every month as we move forward.
But it's not, and that's my frustration, is this has been a problem since 2016. We have been living with the billing problem for such a long time, and my chief source of frustration is that the public is having trouble understanding what Sewage and Water Board is doing because the most publicly facing thing it gets is their monthly bill. So that's number one. So you get the bill, it's wrong. Number two, you try and get somebody on the phone to correct it, they can't. Number three, you get told to go get a plumber's report when it may not be your problem. Number four, you got to wait months before you get to administrative hearing. To number five, you go to administrative hearing and you usually prevail, and then the problem can repeat itself all over again because the bad estimate is still in the thing. We've got to break the cycle before AMI, and I guess I'm not saying this is Sewage and Water Board's attitude, but I'm worried about it, is we cannot say AMI is going to be the panacea for the billing problems. We can say once AMI is implemented on a going forward basis, we hope that there significantly resolves, if not eliminates, most of the billing challenges, but you're still going to have the backlog before things get implemented. And number two, let me just say this. If the state adopted our law as it is, or adopted 12 months instead of 3, it's still the law anyway. And so I need to be able to have something where we can tell the public this is the proactive step Sewage and Water Board has taken based on our considered years of getting bad bills, of being involved, of being engaged, and how we know that your estimate is going to be as close to an approximation as possible.
But the only thing I'd say is that we don't know if the issue that we're not complying, we're not consistently applying the ordinance specific to the 3 uncontested bill, we're not sure that would actually solve or move the needle. If there's a willingness or an appetite to reconsider some of those and maybe through examples and allow us to automate that process, we are more than happy to comply. Again, we're not sitting here being defiant. We're sitting here telling you it is not a feasible, doable, executable
I'm going to let some of my colleagues weigh in. Councilmember Harrison, Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, I don't have a button, and I'm not actually on this committee, but it's good to see you, Steve. It's always great to see you. So my question on the estimated billing is, number one, why didn't you tell us that it was unfeasible to proceed in this manner before we went in this direction, number one? And number two, and please clear this up for me and the public, my understanding is that you have to clear out any past balance before you get to AMI. Is that correct?
Well, the first question to your answer is that we believe we did voice our concerns about, and then actually the two votes were against the task force overall collective approval, or so we voiced it at the time, and it was not received. And I'm going to let either Gray or Renee answer your other question.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to chime in. So, Renee Gonzalez, Chief Customer Service Officer for the Water Board. So I'll just start by saying that we fully, wholeheartedly, and just fully agree that there is a billing issue. I don't think we've ever said that there is not a billing issue. We've accepted the fact that there has been for many years, and we try to pair that communication with the progress that is being made on a daily basis. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to spend time in any way trying to be anything other than collaborative with every single member of the council. But Gray and I were part of the Billing Ordinance Committee, and we sat up there with you, and we voted against many of the proposals that you came up with. And there was a reason to do so. We tried the best that we could, given the circumstances, to voice our concerns. And we either weren't heard or didn't really get a fair opportunity.
To the question, Councilman Harris, the an AMI balance would have to be taken care of by the customer. There's not a need, there's not a way to move on with the customer with a new meter with an existing balance. So.
Right, so that's my point, is that if you have a bill that's incorrect, you then have to clear it up even for you to start the automated billing, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes.
So for the contested bills, and Renee, you and I have gone back and forth over an entity that has a $500,000 bill for 3 buildings that makes no sense, and I'm trying to get to the source of why would a church have a $500,000 bill. I don't think this building has a $500,000 bill. So that church, for example, would have to clear up that $500,000 before going forward with the AMI, which you think is the panacea for all the billing issues.
Yes.
Partly correct, yes.
It's an accumulation.
Well, tell me how I'm incorrect.
No, well, and I don't want to speak about a specific customer's balance or account, but it's not necessarily an inaccurate bill. The $500,000 is a result of lack of payments over years and years and years of usage.
And look, I'm not speaking about a specific bill either. I can tell you my constituent who's sitting at this table has had inaccurate bills that we've been trying to get to the bottom of. Still haven't gotten to the bottom of them yet. So before she gets an AMI bill, she has to clear up a past inaccuracy of billing that you guys are responsible for. So this is what frustrates me about this whole AMI. It's going to be the cure. It's going to be the panacea. Is that as a constituent, as a person who gets sewer and water board bills, if I have a history of inaccurate bills, I have to clear that up before I get to the AMI meter. Please stop interrupting me, Renee, please. So that's my question to you all is, I get that you think that it's going to be the silver bullet, but it really isn't, because you have to then clear up this past inaccurate bills going before you can even go forward.
That's accurate, but once that is solved, the potential or opportunity for error or estimates will go away 100%. So there will be a transition time where we're going to have to interact with our customers and clear all the outstanding bills and one way or another in their favor or our favor, and just move on. I mean, we know that is a fact. 25,000 accounts have some issues that have to be cleared before we move on into a very accurate, timely, smart meter driven bill.
Do you understand what I'm saying, though, is that you as a customer have to clear out a balance on inaccurate balances before you can get the panacea of the AMI.
Well, you'll have an outstanding balance
that is inaccurate because you guys have estimated bills. You have not gone through the 3 billing process. Blah blah blah. So I have to then pay you.
No, you don't.
$100,000 before I can get a smart meter installed.
No. We're gonna install your meter regardless. We're gonna send you a smart meter bill regardless. We're going to document the outstanding balance and then negotiate and hopefully reconcile and then wipe it off the books and move with a clean slate, so to speak. What, hopefully in your favor. If we've wronged you,
Right. I hope it's in the favor, but
that's the intent.
but what I'm saying to you, Mr. Corbin, is we tried to come up with a process of getting to accurate billing by having the 3 accurate readings, an average of those, as JP was saying, and going forward, right? But that system has not taken place, and therefore we have people with outstanding balances that may have inaccurate billing on them, and they cannot get accurate bills because of this balance that they have. And that just doesn't make sense to me, and I'm really confused by the whole thing.
I think we're putting way too much emphasis on the lack of response or consistently applying the 3 versus others, because we have an estimating process that works tremendously well in many cases, and it doesn't in other cases. And I can surmise that the other method would probably end up with the same results.
I guess I would just say, to put a fine point on it, I don't want customers living, though, with the barrage of, oh, I'm getting a smart meter in a year and a half, but now I've got to spend the next 18 months fighting my old bad bills. That's hang on, let me finish, guys. I mean, I just want you to know, like, I have the data. I have 825 bad bills since November 2021. At least people complaining to me about their bill.
Okay.
That's a fairer way to say it.
Okay.
All right? That is a lot for one district council member to have. And I know, because I'm the only person who has access to my email account, that I have people who are repeat customers who've had bad bills that are going on. I think we're really doing a disservice publicly. Forget about kind of the foundational issue here, but to say to people, well, you know, if your meter doesn't get replaced for another year and a half, then you may continue to go through this process, and until then, there isn't much we can do to help you.
We got to stop saying inaccurate information, though. Everybody is going to have a smart meter, period.
I know that,
right?
but my point is, you may not get a smart meter for a year and a half from now, right?
From now.
Yes.
By just
right.
randomly.
Correct, right, yeah.
Correct.
I mean, and Grant, you could get one next month, you could get one 6 months,
accurate.
a year.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, in the interim period, before the smart meter is installed, and before your account is cleaned, then you're in limbo and you have to keep on fighting potentially about bad bills. And that's what we're interested in, is how we clean that up.
Oh, so are we. I mean, obviously, we're trying all sorts of approaches to minimize that interaction. The last thing we want to do is send the wrong bill to anybody. And if we do, we want to correct it as soon as we can.
But there's a difference. I guess here's what we're struggling with. I don't doubt your intent, which is you want to send the right bills. What I doubt is the execution on it, because it has been such a hard, long process. And I understand you have people issues, you have technology issues, you have all of these things, but we have to bring this to a close. And I'm just being very candid here. I am tired of getting frustration from other people about not giving more money to Sewage and Water Board for sewer, for water, for drainage. And we've been saying since the very beginning that if you want to restore credibility, the billing has to be cleaned up. And what I hear Sewage and Water Board saying is, well, we're trying our best, but until AMI happens, you may be in billing limbo for another year or two.
So may I take this opportunity to ask for help then? What we need is more people who can have an analytical mind, so who can help us decipher all these disputed accounts and resolve them one way or another, and wipe them off the books. So the faster we can do this, we are about to hire another outsourced company to help us with the investigation to feed this new unit that their sole purpose would be to just go through disputed accounts and resolve them. Not a hearing officer. I'm talking about just very early on. Ask for investigation and then make a decision and clear up. That's what we want to do.
I've been saying that, though, for like 4 years. Whether it's a hearing officer, whether it's somebody who is senior, more senior than the billing people, somebody else. And if the issue is there's additional funding that's needed, $600,000, $1 million, they'll do it. Let us know, because I mean, this is not a we can kick the can down the road issue. This is a now issue. The other thing, to clarify the record, when we voted on October 26, 2022, everybody voted aye at the committee meeting.
I think that was a logistical.
Just saying, if you all have, it's right here, so.
And I brought it up to someone's attention because both Gray and I voted no, and then the screen showed yes, and nothing happened.
Did you write anybody, Mr. Gonzalez, and say that your vote was incorrect?
Did I write anybody?
Did you write?
I don't think I
Did you
wrote
write?
anyone.
Did you write the chair? Did you write Curo?
No, generally
that's a moot point.
Well, I understand, but my point is, I'm sorry, but you all said that you all fought this at every single turn, and if the vote is registered as an aye based on what it is, I get it. Let's say this. I think in fairness, Sewage and Water Board did not agree with all the recommendations the council has,
that's accurate, yeah.
and we had lots of conversations, some of which resulted in, I think, the council compromising on points, some of which we saying, well, we disagree with Sewage and Water Board, and we're going to move forward with those. I think that's the fairest way to say it.
Fair.
Okay. Councilmember Morrell.
I thought you forgot I was here. That's okay.
Did talk a lot earlier.
Let me go through the list real quick. First, I want to say something that's really, it's kind of mind-boggling because I don't think you understand the predicament you're in, insofar as the task force is proposing solutions that mirror ours that they're going to put in law too. And if you procedurally can't do it, are you going to break the law twice? I just want to start with that consideration. Now, Councilman Giarrusso kind of ended with where I want to start, which is a law was passed by Representative Hilferty. We met in those committees, and where we felt that it was appropriate to compromise, we did, because what we ultimately passed in that billing committee was far less than what we originally sought. Is that correct? We changed parts of the bill in acknowledgement of your concerns. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
Yes.
We didn't change everything you wanted. I'm not saying we did, but I'm saying we changed parts of it.
Yes.
In the public democratic process. Now, I want to go through a couple of things. I just want to get an answer as to whether you're doing it.
Yeah.
So, as far as allowing for estimated bills with the last three uncontested actual bill amounts, you are not currently doing that.
But just to be clear, you have a system estimate, you have a manual estimate. The system estimate based on the last 12 look-back period. If you have a manual estimate, a billing clerk can look at the last recent history, pick three, pick one. It depends on the data. It's a subjective exercise in order to come up with.
Do y'all record on the bills what is an actual read and what is an estimate?
Yes.
Then what prevents a billing associate from looking at the three last actual reads to come up with the estimate?
It's a volume issue. If you were to take that on manually, you're relying on people to look for the correct three, exclude a potential high true-up, apply analytical skills.
But a true-up would not be an actual read. Because
it is an actual, yes.
The purpose of a true-up is to do a look back on your past months. So if I'm using 1,000 gallons, hypothetically, per month, the true-up month, I haven't used 50,000 gallons unless you're saying you input for that one month all the previous gallons that were missing. Is that what manually is being done or an automated process?
Systematically done, yes.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's one thing if you went back, highlighted the true-up, kept what the actual read is and said these are the missing gallons for the previous months. Mm-hmm. But if you have one inflated month with artificial gallons to true up, if that's internally what you're doing, you're actually creating an erroneous actual read because in that month, 1,000 gallons were used, not 15,000 gallons. I understand the true-up process, but if the way you're doing it in an automated structure is to have artificially increase the usage to true up, you're generating a bad bill that is not an actual read. The actual read still, whatever that number, maybe that true-up month it's 1,500 versus 1,000, but it's not 15,000 reflecting the 12 months of you see what I'm saying? Previously erroneous bid. So if that is your process, that's something you have to correct because internally, you're actually creating a bill that is not correct, if that's what you're doing.
That's what the true-up is. It's correct.
Okay, then that is really, really dumb, and you should not do that anymore. Because
That's industry standard for a utility to.
it might be the industry standard, but most of your colleagues in this industry do not have the historic billing problems you have. So you may have to do something different than the industry standard when you keep producing so many wrong bills. I'll go to the next thing. Monthly bills. In the law, if the Sewage and Water Board fails to bill a customer for 3 or more consecutive months, you forfeit that collection. Are there bills, there are people, and I'm asking a question I don't know the answer to, are there people who have opened up an account or transferred an account? I know of people now, several, who have gone to the Sewage and Water Board saying, I don't have a bill and can't get one. What is happening to those people? Do you forgive those bills?
The scenario where people don't get a bill is when they move in and don't actually call. I mean,
I know for a fact that is not true. I know people who move and try to get a bill because the people know they're going to get a bill someday, and that bill is going to be a bill for all the months that they didn't get it. So I know people who go and try to get that bill, and for some reason, the Sewage and Water Board, desperate for money, can't get a bill created. Under the law, the current law, if you do not send out a bill and you don't try to collect for 3 months, are you forfeiting those bills?
We're not charging those bills.
So you're not trying to seek the back money for all the months you didn't bill them?
Have not had that instance come up with the process that we follow after a 40-day period with customer not receiving a bill. We begin reviewing those accounts. We look at the software setup.
I'm going to remind y'all that you're under oath because after this meeting, I will produce the people who you have not sent bills to for multiple months. And my question is, under the current law, if you do not bill someone for 3 months, you forfeit that bill. That is the law. And I keep saying these I appreciate that you are frustrated and having problems implementing the law. And I appreciate how often you said these are suggestions. But it's the law. And the reason why I keep saying this, going through this list, is because the legislature is going to come up with a whole nother set of laws that are going to be very similar to this. And I can tell you, we are like puppies compared to the Louisiana legislature and Governor Jeff Landry. And if he passes laws and you don't follow them, last year he yanked your funding because he didn't like the politics of the city at the time. If the legislature and the task force pass laws, and I'm going to continue going through them, that mirror these, and you don't follow them, we won't be having this meeting. He might be putting some of y'all in cuffs. Let me finish. Payment during dispute process. Are y'all following that a customer shall only be required to pay the amount of the last uncontested bill or amount reflected on the current bill, whichever is lesser?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Door hangers. Are you doing the door hangers?
Yes.
Okay, I can say personally, I've received 1 door hanger in 7 months.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to get a door hanger every other month.
Right.
How are you following the law?
So what I can tell you is that we are purchasing the door hangers. We are instructing all of our meter readers to hang the door hangers every time they read a meter. And we make sure that they are fully aware that they will be held accountable. As a matter of fact, every time we've caught somebody not doing it, they were disciplined severely. In one case, and Councilman Jerus was involved, was discharged.
Okay.
Are we following every meter reader to make sure that they're hanging every door hanger? No, we're not.
Are you estimating every other month and doing an actual read every other month?
Yes. So you should be getting a door
Then
hanger.
how is it possible? And I can tell you, I live in Vista Park. I have talked to all of my immediate neighbors. No one has gotten more than 1 or 2 door hangers over a 7-month period. One of 2 things is happening. Either you're having people systemically not do door hangers, or you're not estimating every other month. And I tell you this is important. This is the conversation about trust. If you guys are not estimating every other month because of personnel issues, and you're estimating more than every other month, It is far more important in circumstances like this to go, we're not estimating every month, we have a personnel issue, than to repeatedly say you are, because the problem is people like Mr. Ben over there are going to go check, and they're going to do public records requests, and they're going to see if you estimate every month. And when they find out that you're not, then it's going to be you're eroding public trust.
Right. Our process is that we are reading every other month.
Okay.
Right.
So the hill that you're dying on, and Renee is probably more dying on this hill than you, Mr. Corbin, is that you're reading every other month, and there's a systemic problem with people not doing door hangers at all.
There is a, yes, there is a.
Okay, so door hangers not being done.
Ingrained,
Got it.
challenging from our meter reading staff to actually do the door hanger, and it puts us in a very unique and uncomfortable situation where this is the staff that we don't have enough of to get actual reads every month, right? We set the expectation, we get them the door hangers. They're supposed to go out and do the door hangers every month, right? Or every other month. And we have had some accountability issues. We've taken accountability actions, but it's a difficult position to be in because we don't want to decrease the number of staff in that department.
Well, and the challenge for us is that if this is, and I actually said this, as you may recall, when we started the door hangers, if this is a challenge, come back to us and let's talk about an alternative. The frustrating thing for me is that I don't need you to come to me at these meetings while we're having these conversations, while we're in conflict to say, I need your help now. You should have asked for our help 6 months ago. You should have asked for our help well before this period, because it helps the public build confidence that the Sewage and Water Board is taking the billing situation seriously, and that when the law cannot be complied with and you've reached a brick wall, if you come back to us and explain in detail what the problem is and we don't address it, that is, in fact, our problem at that point. When you stick your head in the sand and just try but don't really follow the law, that is not a us problem, that's a you problem. I know I've talked to some members, I've talked to Steve, for example, and pitched the idea of, do you want to take pictures of meters instead to show you've read them with timestamps?
So it just so happens the timing is that regardless of this meeting or not, we were going to approach you and ask you for an alternative validation of read.
And that's great, but it taints your ability to try and solve the problem when it appears the solution comes after these combative meetings.
It's just pure timing.
I understand it's pure timing, but the solution's pure timing, the problem's not pure timing. You've known this has been a challenge for a while. Is that correct?
We didn't have an alternative to offer you till now.
Regardless of whether you have an alternative to offer, if you're not following the law and you're not telling us you're not able to follow the law, that is a you problem. If you tell us this is something that we have been unable to address, please let us come back to the billing subcommittee and revisit it. That makes it, and we have a public conversation on it, that's a us problem.
So then what you're offering is that when we have these type of challenges, then to reach out to you, and we will have an actual conversation, a two-way workshop type of conversation to find a solution to the issue.
That is correct.
Because that wasn't
it goes back to,
experience.
and it's actually excellent timing, because as we were here talking today, I got an email from Civil Service, from Amy Trepanier. And let me read this email, because I want to make sure I get it correct. Let's see. All right. From Ms. Trepanier, I am puzzled by Sewage and Water Board Director Corbin's remarks today that the SWB does not have an in-house public relations staff because civil service will not permit it. I have attached a listing of all requisitions submitted by Sewage and Water Board to fill public relations positions in the last few years. The year of submissions is reflected in the requisition number. As you will see, Sewage and Water Board has only submitted one requisition to fill a PR position in the last 4 years, 2023. The requisition was approved by Civil Service. No requests have been received in 2024. I'm happy to provide any additional information you may need. It goes back to my point. If you ask for things and fight for things and you fail, then going to step 2 makes more sense. If you don't have the fight or don't push the conversation and then just throw my hands up and go, I can't do it, I don't have any sympathy for you. If you need more staff for public relations and civil service won't give it to you and you ask for it, that is their problem. If you never ask, that is your problem. If the law is hard to comply with and you ask to meet with Joe or I and say, this is not working, we need a billing subcommittee meeting, and we don't hold that meeting, that's our problem. If you never ask, that's your problem. And the challenge for us right now is, rather than have a cohesive conversation to solve these things locally, you're about to have the legislature come in and do surgery with a sledgehammer because they don't understand the nuances of anything. And when they pass the law, this won't be a friendly conversation. You're going to have the legislative auditor and you're going to have Stephen Street and everybody else looking over everything you do from the lens of their laws, and they're not going to be nearly as gracious as we are. The last thing is that, and obviously y'all aren't doing this probably, there's supposed to be an automated bill review whenever a bill is over 20% higher than the previous month. Is that happening?
Yes.
That is. Are you notifying the customer that's happening?
It's not automated. It's the customer is able to dispute any bill. It doesn't have to be 20%. There's a payment arrangement.
Okay. I'm going to correct you. The law doesn't say the customer has to do anything. It's automatic. And part of the reason why we did that is because rather than the customer have to begin the frustrating process of going through your appeals process, the goal was when you see a high bill come up, you look to see if the bill's correct before the customer begins the process. Because if you see an error and you correct it, you know what that does? That breeds goodwill and public confidence. If we're always waiting for the customer to have to begin the torturous appeal process and customer service process, you've already lost. The reason why the law reads automatic, that is not the customer has to initiate it. It says automatic.
I asked this question to Aaron during the billing advisory group. It doesn't say automatic, to my understanding. Again, this is a dispute after the fact. We do have a bill review process that talks about bills that are over a certain percentage that need to be manually reviewed. We do that to be proactive, as you mentioned, Councilman.
So are you following the law or not? Are you automatically reviewing bills that are over 20% higher than they're supposed to be, than previous bills?
No, that's not
okay.
possible.
Wait, can I chime in here before you go to the next one? I just want to make sure we're reading it because the words are important to me.
Okay.
It says, if the amount of the disputed bill is more than 20% higher than the customer's last actual bill or the last 3 undisputed estimated bills, Sewage and Water Board shall inspect and assess the customer's water meter, in which event SWMNO shall notify the customer 7 days in advance, and they can refuse the inspection.
Yeah, I understood it said disputed bill.
That's not there.
The amount of the disputed bill, and then it says, after a customer disputes a bill, SWMNO shall investigate the dispute, including evaluating the customer's last uncontested actual bill and the average of the last 3. But if you all aren't sending estimated bills based on the last 3 actual reads, then you're not evaluating the customer.
No, it's a full evaluation of the account.
Right, but I guess I want to make sure I understand that.
Huh?
Somebody calls in and says, I have a dispute. I'm calling to dispute my bill.
Yeah.
Sewage and Water Board's position is immediately somebody reviews their account, and if the dispute is more than 20% higher, so my normal bill is $100 and I get a bill for $150, Sewage and Water Board always sends somebody to inspect the meter.
To inspect the meter physically? No.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, that's what the law says.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
My last point today, I guess. Do you guys provide all the documentation to a person in a dispute process regarding your process of if we read the way the law, the Sewage and Water Board shall provide the customer with documentation of each phase of the investigation. Are you currently complying with that? And I say documentation because the frustration we get from customers is they will have communications with people over the phone or verbal communications, but they will not actually get documentation that an investigation is taking place. Is that provided?
Yes, the letter is provided when the investigation is opened and then when it's concluded.
Yeah.
So each phase is only 2 phases. You open and close it. There's no actual like in between.
Correct.
Generally not, no.
Okay. That's all I have on billing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I guess before we leave billing, this is what I would like to do. I know we've discussed this idea of having somebody come in and review the bills, whether it's a third party, whether it's hearing officers. I would like that. And then I would like something from Sewage and Water Board by next week on this ordinance about what they have issues with and problems, concerns, and then what is a proposed solution to those. And then we set a date no later than a week after that for us to meet and to try and discuss those issues.
Just, can I ask for my
Sure.
understanding? So you're asking for us to provide some solutions to these issues, provide what we believe is challenging about complying with the current billing ordinance.
Yes.
I think it's probably beneficial for us to also provide an update on the strike team that we recently stood up, any progress that's been made.
Great. Yeah. I'm not trying to limit it at all. And if there's things that
It also might be helpful to respond to the task force positions on billing, because all of it's going to overlap, and it would probably be illustrative to the legislators who will be offering legislation, because part of the general frustration I know I have and Representative Hilferty has is many of the solutions, for better or for worse, are already in the existing law. And if the legislature just reconstitutes that in any form and it's already not working, then you're going to have it twice. Right. So I think identifying and addressing those solutions to the council and to the task force might be helpful, because otherwise we may figure out how to solve your problem and you may have another law coming down that does the same thing over again.
Right. So just to be clear, we'd love the opportunity to bring in the staff who's working on the smart meter implementation, all what's associated challenges and successes, and then maybe put it out there for your feedback, for insight, for the public's input.
Sure.
So they can clearly understand what's coming down. So we'll have the staff who are working on it being here. Would love the opportunity as soon as possible.
Yeah, great. I mean, and look, one of the things, and I've said this already, but I take issue with the suggestion in the task force about an independent arbitration panel, because you have 30 independent judges who are making 30 different decisions. And I don't think that really helps customers. I think a special master who can group bills into different buckets and then bring sense and order to what's going on, rather than 30 independent decision makers, is a better path forward. So those are the type of things, and look, part of this too, I think to Councilmember Morell's point, is if there's issues where we can agree, then let's agree. If there's issues where we may not see quite eye to eye, let's see what we can do to come close to compromise. And then if there's issues where we just disagree, then that's where we are. But I think we owe it to the public to get over this hump, and just I don't want to beat this horse to death, but we got to get the billing problem solved as quickly as possible, and can't just be an AMI is going to be the cure-all for everything.
I agree.
Okay. All right. The other thing for me in the task force, I just want to say, and I'll leave it to y'all and any of my colleagues who want to talk about it, is this idea of a recovery district for 2 years, I think is a bad idea affirmatively. Number one is you have a Sewage and Water board right now. You have technical advisors to that board. You have the mayor. You have the council. The idea of taking that board, who currently exists, then for 2 years transitioning to a board almost none of whom have local ties and knowledge, and then turning around in 24 months and turning it over to yet a third board makes no sense to me.
We think it's, this is the first time I weigh in on that particular issue. I think that would be terribly distracting, disruptive. At the time where we have momentum, there's a lot of things happening. I don't see the value whatsoever. I mean, I'm all for help from all levels of government where we ask for it and we could use it, but that concept seems very, very disruptive to me.
Yeah, BGR, I know BGR sent us a letter on this point, and they have a card in.
I want to comment on BGR's letter, but it also deals with the task force and it deals with this. So I'll wait till they come up to comment on it. But I do think what BGR is suggesting, I'll wait till BGR comes up.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
I think their suggestion of a transition makes a lot more sense than what the task force suggested. And I'll get more into that when they come up.
Okay.
I'll deal with that.
I didn't even ask them, do you think the council ought to be your regulator? So we'll leave that alone for right now. Councilmember Green, then Councilmember Thomas.
Sorry, for the record, I'm against the state takeover. I want to make sure that's on the record because there are people out there who seem to question what the council's position is. And I think almost every council member has already said repeatedly that we're not for a state takeover.
I think it's important to recognize that the state has its concerns too. We assume that state taking over something is going to result in just the positive project, that the product and that everything is going to be fine. And I don't really want to get into a state versus city issue, but in some respects, I do want to applaud the fact that we have a sewage and water board task force. It was 30 days. That was not enough time to analyze something as complex as a matter. But I also wanted to be made clear to the public that there's nothing inherent in the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans, and because you add the name New Orleans to something, it means that things aren't going to run right. We have raw sewage running into rear yards in St. Tammany Parish. Raw sewage. Something that we could never get away with here in the city of New Orleans. We would be lambasting the Sewage and Water Board every day for something like that. We also have 20 years of bill increases that are going to take place in Jefferson Parish. Jefferson Parish, where flooding took place recently, where the media was present in other cities, such as Marrero, talking about flooding that happened during the last storm. I just hope that, and we're having the discussion now, and it's a very lively discussion, and I appreciate it. I am strongly supportive of what the city council members are saying today regarding the Sewage and Water Board, following the laws and asking us if you need changes and challenges. But if you need changes because of challenges. But I do want to make it clear, I think that we do need to emphasize, and maybe that is going to be from a public relations standpoint, some of the work that goes on at the Sewage and Water Board, the things that we are doing, the 1,000 leaks in the city, that many of which are repaired, the fact that we have work crews that I've seen them respond to emergencies and they've gotten the job done. For example, on Aljamiah Street in the 9th Ward, one morning I was on my way to a church service on Johnny Jackson Boulevard, and there were 5 members working, and the water was shooting up from nowhere, but it was early in the morning. They gotten called. They have an emergency crew that takes care of that work. But I do think that we need to, and you need to think about it. I don't know if it's just public relations, but we need to do something to talk about some of the favorables that do happen. The public needs to know about that. I understand all of the concerns. I have as many leak concerns within District D as we have in other places, but you all think about how we can make sure that we work in that area. I do want to also tell you, I hope that we can come up with a realistic, until we get the smart meters installed, a realistic way to get more meter readers in place. That might require going to the to the Civil Service Commission with the support of the council and asking for something special that can be done until all of those meters are in place. I'm looking forward to the smart meter process, but how long are we talking about before every property would be smart meter, just approximately?
End of 2025. So a year and a half left, or yeah.
Since we were asked to come up with some solutions to the billing problems, obviously the smart meters is going to be a solution in the long term. Maybe in the short term, we can look at something that results in more actual readings. just something to think about,
Right.
how we can do that. But I just want to emphasize that we do have to work more together. It's a little bit distressing to hear that there were things that you disagreed with that you didn't come back to us immediately and say we disagree with it and it can't be done. Because I don't think that this council has been recalcitrant or has been opposed to any suggestions that people have brought to us relative to changes that needed to be made even in terms of laws that we passed ourselves. So come to us on a regular basis and then put us on the spot if it's made clear what was needed, and then we didn't do it. So I just want to emphasize what's been already said in that regard, but I look forward to working with you as we move forward. This is a regional concern, not only billing, because I see problems with people online talking on Nextdoor about the billing problems they have in other parishes too. Infrastructure problems or problems that is regional. I hope that in general, I could have saved these to the end, that as the state looks at the entity which it created in the late 1800s, as the state looks at the infrastructure problems throughout the region, as the state looks at billing problems throughout the region, they recognize that New Orleans is not alone and that there's nothing inherent about New Orleans that says we can't do the job that gets the solutions that our public wants. We just have to be maybe a bit more deliberate about it because we are subject to a lot of scrutiny, especially in the media. But I look forward to working with you all. Please offer us your suggestions without hesitation as to what we can do to be more efficient as a council, but also to help you all to get the job done that the taxpayers and the ratepayers call for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Thomas.
First of all, thank you guys for your service. Whatever it takes to increase public confidence is something we have to do jointly. I think sometimes we talk about increasing public confidence, but sometimes that's not the energy we give out in helping the public be more confident about our ability to fix it. I want to thank my colleague, Joe Giarrusso. I think our task force that we were on, the joint committee that we worked with Ghassan and your leadership, actually had already come up with a lot of the recommendations that the state task force had come up with. So they really just could have read our report or sent someone to be part of those meetings, and a lot of those suggestions would have been there. One of the biggest solutions is money. And I think that if the state really wants to be a partner and really just doesn't want to highlight deficiencies or pick on this city, either because of its demographic or because it's for too long it's been New Orleans versus the rest of the state, maybe someone with the governing task force or our legislators should sit down privately and let's talk about revenue and the efforts to have fair share over the decades that other mayors and other legislators here have asked for. Let's talk about the amount of money for the press that we generate within our boundaries, that from the sales tax to other millages, it's taken automatically off the top. And if we could keep what we generate in this little glorious grimy town where most of the people visit, more than half of the people who come to this state come here, we probably wouldn't have to ask the state for anything. The people who work in this town, the people who toil in this town, the people who do business in this town, we were getting 20 million visitors a year. We're on pace to get that back. So if the state wants to be a real partner, let's talk about the efforts of mayors in the early 70s, in the early 80s, and in 1990s, in the middle 90s, that met with governors about what we generate here versus what we keep, what we put up because of state mandates, what the city does in efforts to create an environment where whether it's Harris or the criminal justice system, that where the state takes its money off the top. And when you talk about infrastructure, 15% of the state's water systems are failing. We have parishes that don't have water systems. We have conditions in some of these parishes where people might as well use 19th century drainage systems in outhouses. With our problems, that doesn't happen here. So, the picture that's created, that's a low-hanging fruit, billing. Everybody's mad about their bills. That's low-hanging fruit, institutional issues and and the way people feel about government. We get all our points because we can blame government who's not working right because the public is frustrated. Yeah, we understand that. But if you really want to be part of the solution and not be a political predator, then maybe we ought to be sitting down behind the scenes, similar to what Councilmember Giarruso's committee and I were doing, working together to come up with solutions. And this public stuff is fine because the public wants to see us in all of our political splendor. But the real work happens when you roll up your sleeves with people you don't like, people you disagree with, people you're not comfortable with, and you say, hey, you know what? We didn't give the media what they wanted, but we got the people what they wanted, and that is us working together to come up with a solution. So I would hope the next time you guys come before us, we're not beating you up about what you didn't do, or you guys may be being upset about what we didn't do, but we're talking about those solutions that we came up together so that people can see us working together. Working together works.
Thank you.
To that point, can I ask one question? Is there money that Sewage and Water Board is tapping into for lead light replacement from the state revolver? I just want to make sure that, yeah, I see Steve shaking his head yes, but I know that we've seen some big numbers from Sewage and Water Board in the past about tapping into state and federal money, and I think we all agree with Councilmember Thomas that we want to make sure we get our fair share, but also if there's other pots that are available, we're accessing those.
Absolutely, and that's another topic. We'd love to come and appear in front of you, maybe at Public Works Committee, and share with you the status of the inventory and our plan of how we plan to execute the replacement of over 50,000 lead service lines in the city. We owe it to the citizens to start that project as soon as we can, and there are funds available that have been earmarked specifically for lead service lines through the state revolving funds that we have identified and started that conversation with the state, with the LDH, to avail as much of that money to us to start the project. It's likely to be about 10 to 12 year project, doing about 5,000 of them every year. So we're going to need your help to lean on property owners to allow us to do their part, their portion of the lead line to make the replacement successful and complete. So we'd love the opportunity to come and show you all the work and what we intend to do.
Yeah, we'd welcome that. Welcome that. Thank you. All right, Councilmember Green, and then we'll get to public comment.
Yes. I'm going to wait to public comments.
Okay. All right. Rebecca Mowbray with BGR, Mr. White, Mr. Morgan, and I think I saw Will Snowden leave, but if he's here, he's welcome to speak last. Ms. Mowbray?
Thanks so much. I'm Rebecca Mowbray, the President and CEO of the Bureau of Governmental Research, and I would like to express our concern about the Recovery District recommendation of the Governor's Task Force on the Sewerage and Water Board. This recommendation would suspend the Utilities Board of Directors for 2 years and install a temporary board created by the legislature. The Recovery District is an attempt to spur immediate improvements in the Sewerage and Water Board, and we have seen customer demands for change. But the district raises some significant concerns. One is that the district's new board members would face a steep learning curve. The current board has worked for several years to improve its governance of the utility and plan for the future. That momentum could be lost. In addition, and most significantly, the district would remove operational control further from city government. This would weaken the council's oversight and public accountability. BGR's governance research points to a different way to improve governance now and support better utility performance. BGR recommends that the City Council work with the legislature to establish legal authority for, number one, a new process for handling and evaluating the utilities funding proposals, and number two, a comprehensive framework for ongoing oversight of the utility. Meanwhile, the City Council should immediately begin planning for changes in the Council Utilities Regulatory Office as the primary vehicle for a new funding review and oversight process. The Council need not wait for the legislature to begin this process. Acting now will help the Council articulate what it needs in the new legal authority. The Council should collaborate with the Sewerage and Water Board to ensure that the new processes are thorough and effective. BGR detailed these options in our 2023 report, Waterworks in Progress, in our March 14th comments to the State Task Force, and in a follow-up letter to the task force. In short, BGR recommends that the Council's funding review process should at least have, number one, independent expert analysis of Sewerage and Water Board funding requests, number two, opportunities for public comment, and number three, clear timelines, requirements, and criteria for evaluating and approving proposals. A comprehensive oversight process should also include, at a minimum, number one, regular review of strategic and financial plans and reports. Number two, updates on operations. Number three, regular monitoring of system performance. And number four, goals and measurable outcomes. Implementing both a funding review process and an oversight process will help the City Council to work more effectively on behalf of citizens. The Council will be able to move beyond handling specific complaints and receiving reports. It could set standards of behavior and hold the utility accountable for performance. Public utility regulation, where no profit motive exists, should pursue a goal-oriented approach that keeps the utility focused on efficient and effective operations. By developing itself as an oversight body, the Council can better promote sound decision-making, balance the interests of ratepayers, and build trust in the utilities management. It will give the Council the tools it needs to create more effective oversight and accountability of the Sewerage and Water Board. These processes should be authorized by state law, but defined in ordinance to facilitate continuous improvement. BGR is happy to serve as a resource. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Councilmember Morrell said he had a question or a point he wanted to raise.
Okay, I thought you were like going to interrupt. Okay, thank you.
I thought Ms. Moby, you were
No,
done, right?
the comment I was going to make is that I 100% agree with you. The original version of the 2022 Stephanie Hilferty bill did that. It literally just converted. It identified the Sewage and Water Board as a utility and authorized the council to begin the process to regulate them as such. The mayor and Sewage and Water Board fought us to a standstill where we only got billing. And I agree with you 100%. I think that if we treated Sewage and Water Board rate increases like we treat energy rate cases, where you had a extended period where you would have a contradictory process where the council and Sewage and Water Board would publicly disclose what rates were need to be increased and why, and present the case over a lengthier period, it would be easier for the council and the public to accept the rate increase was necessary. And I think that that's something, had Representative Hilferty's bill passed in 2022, we'd already be there now. Because the challenge is that, and Councilman Thomas does this as well as Councilman Moreno with energy, we have to stand up all the resources to do that. To your point in your letter, the council would have to staff up CURO to deal with the water utility. Sewage and Water Board would have to staff up to present the expertise in the rate process, and that's going to take 18 months or 2 years. It just is to get to that point. So I wholeheartedly agree. The council is completely poised to do that. We were already there. Sewage and Water Board's board has to get there. You have to agree that you want to be regulated as a utility and you want to deal with the transparency and oversight that entails and begin that process. Because that is the solution. The solution is, with all this argument about split governance, the council does not want to govern the Sewage and Water Board. We want to regulate the Sewage and Water Board. They have a governance board. And part of our frustration in the public debate is they conflate management, governments, and regulation all together. And they're all separate. We don't govern Energy Louisiana, we regulate them. But I think that your suggestion is well received. I think that that would be a better effort on the legislature's part to give us resources to help us get to that point. And I think that would be a healthier relationship than what we have now. But like I said, we offered it in 2022. The board didn't want to be regulated in 2022. But I think that's the best solution to balance the needs of the Sewage and Water Board versus the public's need for it to be regulated.
Thanks. Our report didn't come out in 2022, so I don't have any specific response to that legislation. But we do, in general, feel like more local and less state is a good thing with this, and having stronger processes and a broader set of tools we think would be constructive for having debates and discussions and outcomes that serve the public interest. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think nobody here seems to support the state takeover, so we're all on the same page. All right, Mr. White, Mr. Morgan, and I don't see Mr. Snowden.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. When I read the Sewage and Water Task Force report, I was encouraged by the focus on the unpaid judgment issue, and that, of course, Councilmember Morrell, you brought a fine point to it that the unpaid judgment backlog is a regional issue. It's one shared by the City of New Orleans, Sewage and Water Board, and I don't know if there's other authorities that have that problem. I have been focused on this issue for almost 20 years. My company has a judgment, the City of New Orleans, and we've been on the judgment list since 2003. The one thing that I can say in my recent experience with the city, this city council has taken leadership on this issue. They've appropriated $14 million in the last 3 years to start paying the judgment backlog. So I'm not here to really complain about what the council has done recently. I think the task force report, I think, is instructive and would be helpful for the city to consider some of the steps that they're proposing for the Sewage and Water Board as it pertains to risk management. Right now, risk management is not a part of the legal department. And so when the city's legal department is considering its 500 judgments or so on the judgment list, it's not looking at it from a risk management vantage point. And so it's not really operating to provide a comprehensive solution to not only manage the existing backlog, but also prevent future judgments. And that's working with city departments and better understanding risk. The problem that I currently have is the process. The funding has been appropriated by the city council, but the process of paying judgments is something that is difficult for a judgment holder to clearly understand when judgments will actually be paid. And I know that the city council is working on a process to try to remedy this. And I think that the task force report going through the systemic problems when contractors can't get paid, they're less likely to want to work for an entity. Those things are, I guess, something that would apply to city as well as the Sewage and Water Boards.
We're still trying to work on the judgment ordinance, but we are going to vote, I think, this council meeting on a net 30 ordinance, which is if a vendor for the city, not for Sewage and Water Board, but if the city hasn't been paid within 30 days, at the next council meeting, the department head and the CEO's office needs to come explain why the vendor wasn't timely paid. So obviously those two things to me go hand in hand.
Yes.
And we keep on plugging away with your judgment issue too.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
All right, Mr. Morgan, I think you're last up here, and I think, Ms. Beers, we have one online comment, and I think Councilmember Green want to do that before we turn to the very last issue about the NDR grant.
My name is Larry Morgan. I represent south, east, and west of NOLA. And it's very sad that I must be up here today to express the anger of the people that had to throw out mattresses, sofas, and all this from this last rain. Every time when a catastrophic rain hit the city, the poor area of the city suffer. When I say suffer, the water will come into their area and do them more harm. But the saddest part about all this is that Colbert has been given $54,000 raise and a $10,000 from the governor. And here, we still having the problem of water. He gets paid. But I wonder, if that would have been a black person in that position, would he have survived all this time until the day? They would have been fired him. God damn it, I said the race card is played today, and I'm going to play it well. Anytime that man can survive all this crisis and get paid every penny, God damn it, it's only because he is white. And the saddest part about all this is that Cottrell is the president of Sewage and Water Board. And like I told you, councilmen, before, I went up there one day and I caught her betraying you all and selling y'all out and passing every amendment that they passed before her without even checking it and reading it out for herself. And you senior counsel, ever since she came into her first administration, she gave y'all nothing but hell. From day one, she had no respect for y'all. She never did brought unity and peace and work with you all. Cottrell has destroyed our city, and Cottrell will continue as long as she is in there. And it's sad. I thought that she would be one of the best Afro-American female that will come into the systems of government in our system. Cottrell here did nothing but destroy our city. You all can go on and recognize that I'm telling the truth. And the saddest part about it is that Sewage and Water Board, how they fixed the bill for the on-call worker. If Colbert was right, he would have fired all of them. And what else is sad is that you're going to allow those smart meters. California outlawed them. And you know what you're going to have in the future? You're going to have what California projected that they called it cancer, and you're going to have the biggest class action lawsuit from the future generation. You may not be here to see it, but it's going to become reality. And I told you at many meetings, anything a company proposed and offered the customer is not in their benefit. It's in the benefit for them to generate a profit. Colbert, you ain't did nothing but rip the people off, and you're still ripping the people off, and you still feel ashamed to take the people money like that, because God damn it, all the money that you getting in your salary, we still got water in our black neighborhood.
All right, we have one online comment, Ms. Spears.
Yes, the one online comment is from Mr. Tyrone Walker, who is not a paid representative.
Fire him. He should be fired today.
All right, Mr. Morgan.
Today he should be fired. You'll do it to a
Mr.
black
Morgan.
man if he had that position.
Mr. Morgan, let's
Yes,
let
sir,
Ms.
I'm
Spears-
a respect you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
The comment is, concerns have emerged around constitutional policing and state troopers' operations in New Orleans, the governance of the Sewage and Water Board and other city agencies and government functions, and public safety laws, notably the permitless carry of firearms. Additionally, the rejection of federal assistance for children's summer feeding programs has prompted efforts towards collaboration and bringing the community together to develop people-centered solutions to our problems. These issues reflect challenges in balancing public safety with mass incarceration, governance and funding, and a unified community effort to end food insecurity in our community. The Citizen Committee Coalition is dedicated to organizing and advocating for the interests of the New Orleans community. Their primary aim is to engage local authorities and relevant stakeholders to address and resolve issues impacting the community, ensuring a responsive, inclusive, and equitable approach to civic governance and community development. The overarching goal is to ensure the protection of the New Orleans Home Rule Charter. Regarding Sewage and Water Board's oversight, the governance and operational efficiency of the SWIPNO is being recommended for major overhaul by the 30-day task force, which has had minimal local involvement. The committee has issued a statement in support of ongoing efforts to fix problems by the current board and management. The real issue is funding for the replacement of a 100-year-old water system, not governance. And that's it.
Thank you very much. All right, Councilmember Green.
Well, I very much agree with Mr. Walker's comments that he just made. It's really about funding. There's nothing inherently wrong about the way New Orleans does business, as you, again, need only look at the raw sewage draining into canals in St. Tammany, the flooding problems and the billing problems that we have right in Jefferson Parish. I hope that the Sewage and Water Board and this city council and this city will not be used exclusively as a way to make political points, but if we're serious about our city being wanting it to be the jewel of the nation and wanting to be like other cities, and I question the two other cities that were used as an example, we've got to provide resources and recognize, just as my fellow council member Thomas to my right has talked about, unfunded mandates. The city of New Orleans is responsible for doing a lot of work that benefits the state of Louisiana, and there are concerns with regards to how we in turn get some of the resources that we need to address some of our concerns. I don't want to make this a city versus state issue, but in my district alone, there are a couple of bridges that are out that are run by the State Department of Transportation and Development. I have multiple highways within the district that are overseen, if you will, because they're owned by the state of Louisiana, and they have concerns. We also have issues relative to along the port, along France Road, some of the properties that are blighted and the like, and that again is a state agency. There's nothing inherently different about the way that we can do things here and the way that we can do things on a state level, but there needs to be more communication. A task force was important. A 30-day task force that didn't include a representative of the New Orleans City Council, which provides, if you will, oversight of billing, was just, in my opinion, not a good look for the entire process of saying that we want to work together with the state of Louisiana to get things done. And to the Sewage and Water Board, I want to tell you that I want you to be deliberate about talking about some of the positives that are going on. The changing of the pipes, the work that is going on when street work takes place to replace old pipes, the number of leaks that are repaired. I want to let citizens know that as you drive throughout the city of New Orleans and you see a black spot on the street that doesn't match the cement, it's probably because a repair was made there of a pipe that might have been 75 years old that was leaking. There's still so much more to do. But please let the public know about those positives that are going on, and also let us know how we can work more together. Put the pressure on us by asking us for what is needed, for what you want, and then let us come back, or the public come back and say, well, they asked and it wasn't granted. But we do need to focus on the fact that New Orleans gets a lot right in the midst of all of the challenges, that there's nothing inherently superior in some other parish and throughout the state to what happens in the city of New Orleans. Let's just all endeavor to work together to address those concerns that our citizens have, and let's make our city more efficient in terms of the issues that we've raised today, but in other issues too, and that can only come through enhanced communications. So thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we move to the next topic, let's just kind of make a summation of where we are. So, number one, the administration will get us an amendment on the capital projects to fund the $8 million for the power complex. Number two, Jacobs is going to get us a letter by next week saying that they've spoken with Barnes and Frischartz about mitigating, if not eliminating, change orders, and that there aren't any more surprises coming up. And also next week, Sewage and Water Board will send us a letter detailing anything it wants to about progress with billing, including but not limited to smart meters and its billing processes, but also specifically addressing the law that we passed and obstacles to that, as well as solutions, and any items from the state task force report that the Sewage and Water Board wants to weigh in on too. Okay? All right. Let's go to the last item. I think this will be relatively quick, but it is a segue to the Gentilly Resiliency NDR grant. My understanding is Sewage and Water Board has a very little piece of this. The whole total, so everybody remembers, is $141 million. Based on the information that I have, Sewage and Water Board got $1,265,178. So a small piece of this for energy redundancy and monitoring. Sewage and Water Board is a sub-recipient of that contracted as of 2021. It was supposed to take 2.81 years to complete, so just what the status is.
Yeah, so that project, it is very, very small. Part of it has been completed. That's that pump and power dashboard that folks see. So that's a forward-facing piece. We do have some additional instrumentation at our pump stations that we're trying to get installed. We've had a little bit of a challenge getting qualified bidder interest. We've had to bid it. We have bid it 3 times. We will have to do it a 4th. We may need a little bit of additional funding, and we have been talking with the city about that.
Is that SCADA related?
Yeah, there is SCADA related elements in that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's please try and move on this last piece, because I know time is of the essence, and obviously, to the point Mr. Corbin made today, the more that we can automate and let people know about what's going on, I know we all agree it's important, and we're delayed in implementing SCADA anyway. Do you have a question, Councilmember Green?
Yes, I did. I just want to ask that there be an explanation publicly, because otherwise we'll get a lot of emails. Why are we bidding the project again? Just in a nutshell.
Understood. Yeah, will do. The issue was the first time we didn't get a bidder, and it's very specialized equipment. The second time we had an issue with bidders' qualifications. They didn't submit some of the correct forms. And then the third time we got bids, and they were significantly higher than the estimate.
Okay. It's just one of those explanation things that we get asked all the time. You know, why are we bidding it again? Well, it's because some issues come up that are technical in nature that have to be addressed. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. I know it's been a long day. Thank you. All right, so next topic is Gentilly Resilience. I just want to get everybody cleared out and just, after reviewing the materials Mr. Threat sent me, I'll let you guys clear out before I go. And let you guys get settled. What I primarily want to say, and I'm going to step out for 1 second after I say this and turn it over to my left. Well, I have to step out, but honestly, I think where we are, and I'm not. I'm sorry, my right. My other right. Sorry, I've been here too long. Is that based on what we've seen now, where we are at the Gentilly Resiliency Project was doomed to failure from the start. The former Deputy CEO of Infrastructure created the little-known Office of Stormwater and Green Infrastructure pursuant to this memo of November 1, 2018, to help administer the funds here. I don't understand how this could be, but the memo operates under the false premise that more bureaucracy would streamline work, when in fact these projects are behind schedule. Right now, DPW, Sewage and Water Board, Office of Resilience and Sustainability, Capital Projects, and Office of Stormwater and Green Infrastructure all allegedly have responsibility for drainage and green infrastructure. And that really just makes things tough to know where somebody stops and somebody starts. That's just not a recipe for success going forward. I would just note the report says already the city spoke about the cyber attack, COVID, Hurricane Zeta, and Hurricane Ida as slowing progress, and the HUD report specifically found that there needs to be better planning, better staffing, better management of charge, and need to monitor. And really, I just think we need to be in a point where there's some more consolidation here of assets, so that way there's not a guessing game. And I'll just say this for me is, as budget chair for now almost 3 years, I was wholly unaware of the existence of this office. And I think it really needs to be collapsed into either ORS or capital projects. Not saying that their work isn't important. It certainly is. Green infrastructure and stormwater management is important. But I worry about, you have too many chefs in the kitchen. It's really hard to cook and bake the way you need to. Councilmember Morrell?
Yeah, I think if it's not covered in your proposal, I think you should make sure to highlight it. Obviously, this little-known fake department that was created did not secure the original grant. And it's important when you're kind of giving us a historical context, when this was secured under the previous administration, it was obviously allocated to someone. And as Councilman Druso said, it was then handed off to this group that no one really knows about and no one takes responsibility for. And it is your job, unfortunately, Mr. Threat, to try and figure out how to right that ship. But I think it's important for us to also know when the grant was awarded, when it was received, who had it originally, and what information do you have as to why it was necessary to shift it?
Yes, and I just wanted to, well, thank you, Council President, Council Vice President. Thanks for the opportunity to bring my staff in front of you to answer a lot of questions. I read the news articles, I've heard issues, but nobody knows better what has happened with this program since May of 2018 when I walked in on the transition team. I can tell you that, just for the record, the mayor brought me in here when I left at 3 years as the FEMA director for the state of Louisiana. And when I walked into the state of Louisiana after Katrina in 2009, it was less than $1 billion spent and nothing was done. And I moved $37 billion into this city, developed the first single settlement for Recovery School District to build 83 schools out of 125 that went underwater. So when the mayor brought me in to move projects. So it's my intent to move this project into construction and into completion, hopefully before I leave this administration. To answer your question, Councilmember President Morrell, when I first got here, the NDR and HMGP projects were resident in Department of Public Works. And what happened at that time in 2018, when I was Director of Project Delivery, all the HMG projects had not made benefit cost analysis. So we did not make that BCR of 1, which made those 6 projects in HMGP non-feasible. We had spent only about $1 million in the NDR project. So what I did was I moved Ramsey, I talked to Ramsey about it. He said, hey, why don't you move all of those project engineers, projects from HMGP and NDR to a separate unit where we can just focus on moving work. So that's what we did in 2018, November 2018.
And before you go to the next step, I guess, and this is where, from the information Councilman Druso provided, that might have been the intent, but the budget doesn't reflect that this office was ever actually created.
Yes, I know.
And so, even though it might have been the intent, and to Councilman Druso's point about mere bureaucracy does not streamline anything, I appreciate that might have been the intent, but I don't hear yet why that was a good idea.
Well, I think it was a good idea because we were going to lose $140 million in HMGP money. That was a good idea. And when we moved the staffing to project delivery unit, all the PDU, the project delivery unit positions authorized by ordinance, were all grant and FEMA HUD funded positions.
I appreciate that you think it was a good, do you still think it was a good idea in hindsight?
Well, I can't say at that time that's what we did.
So that's why I said I think when you explain it to us right now, it seems like a good idea, but now we're several years later, now we're post HUD's report, it is apparent that if it was a good idea, the follow through was lacking at this point where we're at.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
I mean, the follow through, like I say, we have had, and it's in my briefing slides, unlike other cities that was awarded, 13 cities that were awarded, they say we're slow spending. The number one slow spender at 1.9% is New York City with $104 million sitting on the books. We're not the slowest spender. We've moved money, all my projects, and I've got all my project managers sitting behind me if you have any specific questions, are sitting here to answering your questions, but these projects are moving. Most of these projects will go into construction or move this year in 2024 or early 2025. We have until 2029 to finish this grant.
Well, I guess when I look at the cities we're doing as comparable cities, I would argue, and I mean, I think you would agree, the amount of money that New Orleans was awarded versus our population size was pretty substantial.
It was.
Because I mean, we got 30 million less than New York City, and New York City has a larger population than the state of Louisiana by a magnitude.
I agree.
So, though New York is further along, I mean, when you look at Springfield, Massachusetts, Massachusetts, Springfield, Shelby County, Tennessee, Minot, North Dakota, which there's like 10 people in Air Force Base there. I understand you're saying we're not the slowest spender, but, and this goes back to some comments I know Councilman Giarrusso and the rest of the council have made, the challenge for us is we're still pursuing more federal money as we speak. And you know from working in FEMA, when you get called a slow spender, when they're looking at the next $140 million grant and they're competitively bidding for it, our status as a slow spender is a very, very, very bad thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And after this year, we won't be slow spenders. Because what I'm saying is that I'm getting ready to move these projects.
I'm laughing because because as we had this long debate with Sewage and Water Board, you may have every intent to spend that money. We got to find the contractors that want to do the work to spend the money, but that's a separate.
But if I could, Council President, when you look at these lists of cities, you're looking at the dollar amount. You're not looking at the scope of work. Most of these cities put their money into affordable housing projects, resilience facilities. I mean, we're doing complex construction here, and I think that's the difference.
Well, our intent is to do complex construction. We have not done it.
No.
Okay, so this just for clarification, like they were doing affordable housing and then they did the affordable housing. We won this grant based upon the complex construction that was in the proposal that we have not actually done.
No, and not on the slide and in the scope of work is leverage. We use JRR leverage as part of our grant application. So we had to actually complete JRR leverage as part of this program. So my point is that, you know, everybody in the audit findings, and I worked for FEMA for 3 years, and I had 100 DHS audits when I came in that asked me to claw back money from New Orleans projects. An auditor is in the business of findings, and they have findings, but we don't have to agree on them.
Well, I mean, I think I do not expect many people to agree with all the findings in an audit. This audit was particularly bad, and it's very hard for this council or the public to discount the audit as a whole. I think that certainly there could be arguments on components of the audit, but I think the audit as a whole is very difficult to get past. And more importantly, I'm less concerned about the audit itself. I'm more concerned about, A, how that audit will impact us getting future federal money, for one, and for two, for the people in Gentilly. As I said, when I was still in the Senate, in 2017, when this was originally awarded, people get very frustrated in communities when they're told something exciting is going to happen, and then half a decade passes and nothing's happened. And I know we had some recent moves to break some ground here and break some ground there, but when you have these audits coupled with the lack of substantial construction, you really have people lose hope it's going to happen. And I appreciate you're trying to accelerate to get us out of that slow spending category, but I think for purposes today, and I'm gonna let you do your chart unless someone else wants to talk, but I think that it's not just a conversation about why we dispute the findings, it's a conversation about what substantial changes that you're gonna do to make sure this money gets spent. Because I will tell you, as much as you want this done before you leave, these council members, I speak for myself and many of my colleagues, none of us want to be the ones who were here when we lost $140 million in federal money because we didn't spend it. That's not the place anyone wants to be as an elected, appointed, or governmental official, that you were given money and because you dropped the ball, you lost the money.
Right, well, that's why I've spent $1 billion in JIRR, and I'm trying to spend that other $1 billion. I don't want to leave anything on the table for the council folks that are here or the residents. It's as a public service servant, it's my responsibility to move all of these grants, whether it be a JIRR, HMGP, Municipal Auditorium, Gordon Plaza, Lincoln Beach. It's my effort and my intent to move all of these projects.
Okay, I'll let you get back on your slide. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah. So this is the current organizational chart. If you look at it, it's the mayor, deputy CEO, myself, with my project team that's sitting behind me. Those are the folks that are actually running these projects as program managers or engineers. And then on the other side of the house, I've got Tyra Brown with me, who is the director of policy and community development. Kosharia Allen, who's the grant manager. I've got my chief of staff, Lenitra Hassan, that sits here with me also. So that's our basic organizational structure at this point today. And what I wanted to do is actually go into the findings so we can brief the public and the council and the media on the findings itself so we can provide a response. So, Lenitra, you want to do the first?
Good afternoon. In the findings, the first one, these are recommendations that was actually in the report from HUD. These recommendations were in the actual report that was submitted on March 11. However, in January of this year, there was an exit conference. And in that exit conference, we actually provided some of the responses to these actual findings. The first one about reassess the 8 infrastructure projects still in design or planning phases to determine whether the city can complete the projects and how the remaining funding can be best used within the next 6 years. And that is something that we are doing. That is something that we have started. That's why Mr. Thread is able to say which ones will be at construction phase with this year as well as 2025. For the $14,683,335 originally budget for the Melanie and microgrid projects with HUD to determine whether it's planned action amendment. So these 2 projects, as we have discussed, we will move forward with them. However, if we see that we're not able to complete these 2 projects, we are going to move those dollars to other projects in the NDR that will be of better use.
And these 2, if I could, Council President, I wanted to just elaborate on some of the issues with Milneburg and microgrid. When we came in 2018, the scope was built, the grant was awarded. So what we had to do was just pick up the baton and execute the projects. As we move forward to 60% design in Milneburg, which was it wasn't a sub-recipient, it was a lease with the Milne Trust. The city had a 99-year lease with the Milne Trust, where you know where that is, where the NORD headquarters, and there's 2 cottages there. When we got to 60% design, it was some conversations with the Milne Trust that they wanted to bring another a lady facility into one of the cottages. And they told us as part of renewing that lease, they did not want the water on a stormwater project going into the property. So at that point at 60%, what do we have to do? We already had designed at 60%. We had to look for other options to try to keep as much of that design as we could and move to other properties, city-owned properties, if we had them available. And we found 3 properties that were for public use. Folks that gave them to the city for public use, like parks or whatever. 3 separate properties where we could still move that design, just a few tweaks, and use those properties. Right now, we're in the state of law, reaching out to the owners of those properties. We found the owners of the properties so we can move forward and negotiating with purchasing those properties and move the Milneburg project. So that one there that had been stalled through negotiations and legal issues, we're gonna move. Microgrid was another project that we had issues with at the time we picked up the design on that one. It was really to go to the Gentilly neighborhood, and when you know that where the Rouse's campus is, there, the shopping center, and UNO Arena, put the solar arrays on the top of those buildings, tie into a sewer and water board pump in that area, and then tie into the grid of energy. Sewer and water board had a problem with it. Energy had a problem with it. They hadn't even talked to UNO and Rouse's, so that one was in a quagmire for us to figure it out. And we're still gonna try to move that project simply because we won the grant for microgrid through NREL and Department of Energy, and they did a whole study, which I'd like to send you, on microgrids within the city, and I think we've got enough support and expertise in ORS to move that project also.
Okay. Yeah. The next one is review the number and types of positions for the NDR staff that are responsible for oversight and completion of infrastructure projects. There is another slide where I show you that we have increased staff, and those positions have actually been reviewed. When HUD was actually doing this review, one of the things that was brought out about the difference between those staff that is for project delivery and versus administration and planning. And so we have made the adjustments for that to be able to charge the staff to the proper category for those different positions. The next one, revised, is risk assessment plan and process to ensure that monitoring is regularly conducted for its infrastructure project through project completion. And what we have done there is to actually do more monitoring than we did before. We were laxed on that, and in speaking with our local HUD, we have made some changes. We have changed our monitoring review instrument to be able to do a better risk assessment for our monitoring. Develop and submit HUD for approval of updating planning administration budget and staffing plan after reassessing the infrastructure projects. That goes back to that whole positions of the staffing and being able to charge to the actual different projects based upon project delivery as well, or activity delivery. And that goes for the next couple of ones, the 1F as well as 1G. If you go to the 2, you want to say something about those, Joe? If you go to 2A, provide monitoring reports and support documentation to show that it conducted periodic monitoring of NORA performance and compliance with program rules and regulations. And that is something that we are have already started that process. And we also have NORA here if you all have any questions, as they were one of the agencies, the entities that received some of the funding for the CAP program.
Can I just stop for a second? Mm-hmm. So I appreciate going through the slides, and I'm sorry I had to step out for a minute. So I know I've read them before, so I'm familiar. I guess where I really want to land is we could go through each project if we needed to, but if we're in a state of uncertainty, I don't want to do that either. So I'm just trying to figure out which of the projects that were originally delineated for which they are going to move forward, and which are the ones about which there's uncertainty. Because I just think we need to be candid with the public. about where that is, and I even remember in reading in the HUD report, in fairness to this office, OSGI, that in some part, like, the owners didn't want to do some of the green.
That was Milne Trust.
That was Milne Trust, where they just said the owners didn't want to do it. So obviously, we're not going to cram something down people's throats who don't want it. So I want to know what we're dealing with so we can all set expectations. And Joe, let me just say this before you answer, is I am not trying to take away from Gentilla. I want to make sure that a part of the city that has something, but on the other hand, if it's not going forward, and we know that Joe Brown could use this, or City Park could use this, or someplace in Central City could use the money, then we're being smart about how we reallocate.
Right, I understand. I think when you were out, I probably briefed that piece of it, Councilmember Caruso, but it was Milneburg Microgrid. So Milneburg, the Milne Trust said, hey, we want to redo the lease with the city.
Right.
We've got other plans. At this point, we don't want water coming in from the canal into stormwater on the property. So what we did was we were at 60% design. So we were moving forward, ready to move to 90, and we had to change course in the middle of the stream. And we found 3 properties. We thought they were Nora properties in the beginning, but they were private properties that were given to the city for public use, like parks or whatever, fairways. And then what we did was went and the law department's been searching for probably 4 or 5 months and located the owners. So we're negotiating with those owners right now to purchase the property so we can use them. But what I wanted to say, Councilmember Caruso, is we're going to move forward with Milneburg Microgrid, but at the point in summer, if I think those are not feasible, then we're going to move the money within the end of our program to someone else.
Well, can we do this, Mr. Threat? I know the administration's supposed to come this summer about ARPA funds that haven't been expended. I just say we lay bare all federal funding issues and just have an agreement, and then that way.
I agree with you.
We settle everything at one time.
And I think Council President Morrell brought up the concept, and I think you have too in our discussions about, the project delivery group sitting either with ORS and Department of Public Works. We brought them from that agency. It's something that I'm going to take back and talk to Gilbert about for consideration.
Yeah, that'd be one I'd be more interested in more quickly. I understand it's going to take time, and I know Ms. Kincaid has left, but I really do want to make sure that these projects are getting, and we ask a lot from everybody at this table.
I know, and I think it would help my team sitting behind me, because we can't get, if it's not federal or FEMA, HUD, CDBG funding, if it's not authorized by those federal grants, we can't use the money. We don't have any other funding source.
Right, and I know we've had conversations before of there might be a joint infrastructure project, and can we fold in this HUD money to help with green infrastructure as part of joint infrastructure? I don't want to take food out of somebody's mouth, but if we've reached a determination collectively that certain things aren't going to work, then how are we going to pivot and make sure those funds are available before the expiration in 2020?
Right, and I know since Mary Kincaid left, and she worked hard on this since 2018, I think that, instead of replacing another layer of project management, it might make better sense to bring in project controls or something else like that to manage the budget and the speed of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I don't want to conflate JR with this, but it may make sense if we have a PMO system for joint infrastructure, think about having either the same or similar project management.
Yeah, and hopefully, Council President Morrell will spend all this money. Hopefully, we'll get more HUD money. But at that point, I mean, in the federal grants, as you know, when we get to the end of projects or grants, we have to right-size staff. So, just thinking about it, moving that organization into one of those entities, ORS, and I mean, we need longevity, and we've got expertise in-house right now.
Right. Yeah, and again, I just want to make sure the collective, but most specifically the public, knows who to look to as these things are coming online.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A question though, Councilmember Jerusalem. Yeah. So I would like to brief more regularly.
Yeah.
On. But I mean, we can come in with Department of Public Works, we can come in with ORS. I know last time we briefed to it was in quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, listen, every committee, I think, can handle a lot of different things. So if it's quality of life, if it's public works, if it's budget, we're happy to do it. And I guess we're in April now. I think what makes the most sense is why don't we do this as part of that federal funding meeting that we're going to have maybe in July or August. So that way it gives you a couple months so you can organize, get up to speed. Then it gives us some more certainty about what's coming next. And then we can discuss publicly what the future looks like.
Right, and I've got, I know that CDM Smith, who's the PMO, they're providing deliverables and generating reports that I'd like to make the council privy of some
That'd be
of those
great.
reports we're looking at.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take those. And if you just want to send it to either me or President Moreno and we distribute, we're fine, or however you want to do it is great. All right, thank you. Is there, Councilmember Green?
I wouldn't mind seeing you do something soon in the public again, and I'll help people get there. If we have to come to Milne or some other place, there's obviously a focus on certain areas, but it doesn't have to be so often. But I'm going to tell you, the question that I get once you've started a project, such as we started the Miracle Water Gardens, is, well, what's next and what about the rest of them? I know that we've reported it here. Not asking you for a lot more meetings, but consider a meeting in the public, and I'll get the word out. And I'll say to you, man, you had a chance. You didn't have to come to council meeting during the day. Here was a chance for you to ask a question and see those charts and those graphs again, you know?
Yeah, and I've got on requests, I get requests from the neighborhood engagement groups,
right.
Civic leadership to come and talk. So I'd be more than happy to present the program to one of the neighborhoods.
Put up a tent and have it at the Miracle Water Gardens.
Oh, that sounds good.
All right.
All right. I know we have 2 public comments. Is Colette Delacroix still here? Colette? No? And Pastor Morse.
First, thank you so much for the opportunity, Chairman, for the opportunity to share. I'm here because I'm with Thrive New Orleans. We're a nonprofit organization. Many of you know who we are. We are into workforce development and small business development. There's been a lot of conversation about what has not worked. I'd like to talk about what has worked. We have been able, through this partnership with the Office of Resiliency, we are the National Disaster Resilience Operator. We have, through the workforce development and the team with Sinead Villavaso and that team, we have graduated over 150 individuals. 144 of those have been certified in green infrastructure, and 140 of them have received internships, and 100 have been placed in full-time jobs. And there's a synergistic movement between NDR and also with NORA. And I'm also here to talk about NORA. And we want to thank Tyra and Joe, and we've been working closely together. But Brenda Burr also with NORA. Through NORA, NORA is a tremendous on-ramp for small businesses that are trying to get into green infrastructure. Many of those businesses are BIPOC businesses. Many of them are legacy businesses that are transforming and morphing into green infrastructure. Today, we have, Thrive New Orleans, have been able to partner with NORA to do up $1.5 million in business. We have on-ramped over 15 businesses, and we have created like 40 jobs from the partnership with the Gentilly CAP program and the NDR program. So I'm here to say, yes, there's a lot of work to be done. Yes, there are some challenges. But as we move forward in the future, we must understand that this project, this is very important. And we're creating our future workforce and climate resilience. And I think that we should also be very focused on the fact that we want to make sure that our own residents of New Orleans is part of the solution. And the work that Joe, his team, Sune's team, Tyra's team, Brenda's team is doing is helping us create that. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to partnering, continue to partner with the city and move forward. I know, Eugene, you've been, Councilmember Green, you've been to some of our graduations. You've seen the changes and transformations that have happened in people's lives. Many are just as involved, and they're changing their lives and turning their lives around. So there is some very positive things happening with this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Is Logan Burke here? Oh, there you are. Hey, Logan.
Hi there. Logan Burke with the Alliance for Affordable Energy. I was really excited to hear Mr. Threat refer to the microgrids work that the city was able to get from the National Renewable Energy Labs. I actually have copies of that work for everyone if you'd like it. One of the important things that I think the City Council has the opportunity to do as a result of this NREL sort of deep dive into what we need to do as a city to actually enable area microgrids that are described in this grant. It's up to the council to make the policy to unlock it. Basically, right now, the barrier, or at least for Entergy, is the interconnection requirements and interconnection policy. So without there being a city council directed interconnection policy, it means that it just defers to whatever Entergy's interconnection policy is. So the council has the opportunity to open this up. And it sounds like there's also a need to have Sewage and Water Board at the table. And so creating a really specific docket and have those parties at the table and address these issues and potentially put in place some of the recommendations that NREL has already suggested. So there's a way forward there.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Appreciate it. And then you have something, Logan?
Yeah, may I provide you the NREL studies?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have somebody come grab them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then my understanding is Ms. Delacroix had a letter that will also put into the record as well since she had to leave. All right, well, I know it's been a long day. Councilmember Morrell, you want to stay longer or should we adjourn?
No.
That's
so much fun.
All right, you move to adjourn, which Councilmember Green happily seconds.
Yep.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Joe's just mad because he was bringing angry dad energy and no one was picking up on it.